On today's special episode of Homeworthy, we're touring 4 stunning New England homes full of summer charm and character. First, we'll step inside a colorful Connecticut home packed with playful patterns and eclectic flair. Then we'll head to New Jersey, where a DIY guru turned a new build into a cozy, vintage-inspired haven. Next, we'll explore a collector's dream in Sharon, Connecticut, filled with antiques, bold art, and worldly finds. And finally, we'll tour a sprawling estate with old-world touches, a vegetable garden, and even a formal rose garden. Enjoy! Spend the hottest months of the year in style with Homeworthy as we visit the most extraordinary homes around the world. From the sun-soaked shores of the Hamptons to the classic beachfronts of Nantucket to the vibrant courtyards of Morocco, be sure to subscribe to Homeworthy's summer series to make every day feel like a vacation. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Joanna. Welcome to our home in Connecticut. Come on in. Hi, I'm Joanna Buchanan and I have a business in home. I'm a designer and I design tabletop, home decor, and I especially love doing Christmas ornaments. I'm based in Wilton, Connecticut, which is a town that I had never heard of before we started looking for a house in Connecticut. And my husband and I pulled up actually, and we fell in love with this house. It was completely derelict, overgrown. It's early 18, I think it's 1816 or something it was built. And it's got some newer extensions that were done in the 60s. And what I love about the house is that it's set in really beautiful gardens and it's sort of set on a hill. So from all the windows, you see greenery and you see nature from pretty much everywhere in the house. We did so much to this house, and my husband is a contractor, so we both love the romance of a derelict, rundown place, but we also both, I think, have a very similar vision of what we know things can be. So when we first saw this place, everything was really dark, weird blue carpet everywhere, the walls were navy, it was a very, very dark house. And there was wood, a lot of natural wood. And when we saw it, we knew both immediately what we wanted to do. We wanted it to feel like a garden inside, and we wanted to paint everything white. My husband's a big, let's paint everything white. And I knew I wanted to really make it, I really wanted it to feel colorful and optimistic and modern. I didn't want it to feel a little bit sort of like an old English estate. I didn't want that feel. And so we moved really quickly. My husband's guys came in and, you know, within 2 weeks, pretty much floors were sanded, paint, we ripped things out and changed things around. But fundamentally, the structure of the house stayed the same. Most of what we did was cosmetic. Well, new kitchen, new bathrooms, I guess that, yeah, there was a lot of work. But, and he said to me, the electrician's coming tomorrow, have you picked your lights? And I was like, no! So I was running to open light stores, you know, nearby, trying to find something. So we moved quickly, and that was nice. So I was born in the Philippines. I grew up in Hong Kong. I went to school in England, and then I moved to New York, worked in New York, and also worked a lot in India as well, traveling to India multiple times for months on end. So I think I have such a global view of the world. I feel like all these visual elements have distilled themselves into my brain. And when I'm designing now, I really pull from that. I do very little kind of academic research. I really am looking into myself and reflecting on the things I've seen and pulling all those different influences into my work. So I loved the bling of Hong Kong and the gold in Hong Kong. I love the textiles and the amazing color in India. I love now being in Connecticut and having my garden be a huge influence on my work. And obviously city living both in Hong Kong and New York, that sort of hard-edged glamour is how I imagine those cities. And I always think of that too when I'm designing. So this is our reading room, and it's actually our children that named it this, because when we moved into this house, we weren't sure what this space was going to be used for. And very, very initially, both children found this the room that they wanted to sit and read in. And so as my husband and I were encouraging every form of reading, we were like, go for it, we're going to call it the reading room. And so the name has kind of stuck. And what I like about it is that there's no TV in here. It's very quiet. It's got beautiful light. And we've got some really cool vintage library carts that we use for our books, which we've completely outgrown now. So we need to find more vintage library carts for that. We've got a brilliant old fireplace here. It doesn't work, so we filled it with kind of plants and color, which I love. And then we painted everything white, the high gloss white when we moved in. It was, as I said, it was really dark. There was a lot of dark wood. And I love just taking these really old distressed beams and painting them high gloss. I think it's so fresh looking. Some of my favorite pieces of furniture are in here. These are vintage chairs that we picked up at flea markets, and then we lacquered them in these really, this one we lacquered in this fabulous sort of semi-gloss turquoise, and then did the upholstering to match, which I love. And then this one is so cool. I had this piece of vintage Indian fabric from my travels, and I loved the idea of taking a very sort of traditional preppy cane chair and upholstering it in beautiful Indian textiles. And then this is a funny piece. My husband is a big lover of quirky things. It's actually a coffee table made from skateboards. So I love the mix of all of these kind of funny bits in here. This is a cabinet that I had from my apartment in London. I got that at one of the, I think, Portobello Market or something, and I had the glass top cut for it. And I love all these things on top. They're just so, it's an eclectic mix. This I think sums me up probably, because it should have a very traditional kind of Roman bust on the top of this marble pedestal, but I love it with the Buddha on top. So I think that juxtaposition of classical and slightly hippie Indian Eastern vibe, it just, to me, that I just love what this stands for. Nothing too as it should be. We've got beautiful light in this room, as you can see, and the windows look out onto some of the back garden, and this really cool gold glass ball that we bought at a vintage shop in Connecticut that actually belonged to, what's the name of the producer with the red hair? Ron Howard. So Ron Howard used to have an estate in Connecticut, and apparently sold it all off, and we bought his beautiful gold ball. And as we go through the house, you will see I love, love, love round things, and I love balls in all different sort of iterations. So I love, love, love this room, and everyone who comes in here is firstly just like, oh my God, I can't believe you made such a bold choice with the wallpaper, which we'll see, but I think to me it is absolutely the garden inside. And then this was something, the fireplace that we put in when we moved in, there was the weirdest fireplace and mantelpiece that didn't have a shelf. And I was like, oh my God, that's the ultimate accessorizing opportunity, is a shelf above a fireplace. So we bought this fireplace, I think, from somewhere like Home Depot, but then used the English Paints of Europe paint to get this amazing green color. These are all mirrors that I've collected over the years from London, actually mostly London and some New York. And then these are pieces that Brad and I both, we literally always fall in love with the same thing and each other. Oh my God. But we saw these gold pine cones and just loved them. And then this is one of Brad's old pieces. God knows who this guy is, but he's kind of cool up here. And I just love the mixing of the gold and the silver. I love all the different textures on here. And I work really hard to keep the plants alive because it is not easy. This is actually something that Brad found on the street. And I think it's so pretty. Again, the balls, the round things. And I love this. It's a vintage one we had it rewired, so it's really cool. And then over in this corner, we have, this is actually a garden table that we brought inside. And we collected these funny things on here. These are Hubble telescopes, apparently. And I think we saw them and I think we got completely scammed because they were so expensive. And we were like, you know what, we didn't really need to buy the Hubble telescope to have in our house, but it's a good story. But we bought them before we had kids and we were sort of, had money to spend on things like that. This is a cool lamp that I found actually in Brad's garage before we got married. And then I had this brass lampshade made for it. And so many people come in and they're like, oh my God, where can I get a brass lampshade made? And the place that I had it made in the city has gone out of business, so it's not there anymore, which is a shame. And then, more balls over here in this corner. Oh, and this is actually, this is one of my trays from the new collection. And I always like to put things that I've designed into the house to see if they work, if the colors work, because my collection is very much an expression of my personal aesthetic, obviously. And so if things work in the house, then they're probably going to work in the collection. So I love this new ECAT tray. And I love the play of the ECAT with the stripe. So this is another piece that people seem to love when they come into the house. It's Designer Guild fabric on, I think it's a Mitchell Gold Ottoman. And it has really withstood the test of time and children, and a lot of children jumping up and down on it. So I would say to people, don't be scared of using velvet and precious fabrics because sometimes they really are just completely fine. In this corner, I've got my little collection of balls. So these are some of my glass balls that I've collected over the years. And I also love glass. I just love the way it takes color. I love the translucent aspect of it. And I love playing that against this vintage mirror, again with the circles. This is a piece that I bought in a market and then I painted it gold and kind of distressed it. And I've had this with me for such a long time. I also love to have lots of textiles around. So we always have Indian quilts, and I've got a lovely cashmere throw there so that when you're watching TV, there's always tons of, we call them tuckles, to kind of snuggle in with and just get really kind of cozy with. So we bought these lights at a vintage store, and they're a pair, but a kind of mismatched pair. So we have one here and one over there, but we made them a proper pair by having the matching shades made in the black gloss. And then actually, this is another street find. So it was funny as I was kind of going through the house thinking about what I was going to say. I was like, oh my God, all of our furniture is from the street. But this was another street find that we just painted black. It's one of those vintage magazine kind of racks, but I love it in here because it's kind of light and airy and it doesn't take up too much space. It's funny because I think I read somewhere once upon a time that as you get older, you do have this inherent desire to be closer to nature. And I read it when I was young and thought, oh my God, they're insane. I'm never going to leave the city. But actually, my husband and I were both drawn to having more space. And the beauty of nature, I think you do not get in the city. So the transition was difficult at first because I didn't drive. So I moved here and I was like stuck in the middle of nowhere in a garden, which was beautiful, but still not driving. But we still spend a lot of time in the city. We still have a place there. So we're back and forth quite a lot. And I do find when I come home now, I think it's age, that I am so grateful to just be surrounded by all this green and beauty. And for me, gardening was a hobby when I was growing up when I was in England at my parents' house, and now gardening is one of my massive hobbies as well. So I think that has eased the transition. Okay, so this room I love because there's light coming in from both sides, and it is absolutely, you feel like you're inside outside with all this glass. It's so cool. And we use this, again, a multi-purpose room. We use it as a kind of dumping ground for a lot of the sports equipment and things like that. But it also houses our music area, so that's where the kids do their piano, and we've got guitars and stuff there. And also we use this as a dining room. So actually it was so fun. I got to set up the table for a spring lunch, brunch, whatever. So it was, normally there's more stuff on here, but it was nice to clean it up and really sort of set the scene for a pretty sort of spring brunch. This is an area where I play with a lot of my textiles. So these are all things that I've designed, all the pillows in our collection. And I love to play with them and see what works together, what colors are working together, what fabrications work together. And it's very impactful, and I do change it seasonally. So this is definitely more of a spring vibe. Sometimes I'll do something a little bit darker and moodier, but this is definitely all about fresh greens and gorgeous pinks. So that is my spring color palette. I love the lights in this room. They have this beautiful sort of, they're really oversized. They've got this really cool natural texture. And I love that against the kind of slightly more glamorous mirror that we painted matte white. We painted the piano white. Like, we'll paint anything. We give us anything and we'll paint it white. And then we've just got some cool pieces in here. This is a vintage armoire that holds a whole host of Lego and photo albums and stuff. And then some of the cool lights that I've had. And then my husband is always picking up artwork. And actually, as I was getting the room ready yesterday, I was like, wait a minute, there's a painting up there that I've never seen before. And he had obviously just come in and just chucked it up there and hoped I wouldn't notice, and I didn't. But yeah, so he's always finding paintings and just sort of popping them in the house. But actually some of these paintings are his. Like, this is one of his paintings, which I absolutely love. And this is another one of his. So I love having his paintings around the house as well. So it's just, you know, it's a mix. So I was having a play with some of our new spring collection and trying to decide if I was setting a spring or having a spring brunch, what would I do? So I loved bringing in, or being inspired by really this beautiful color palette of the flowers, the pale, pale pink, and this really lovely lilac. And obviously green is a huge color for me. I love it. And then these are some of our new pieces in the collection. So this is our bow napkin, which is actually kind of fabulous because it has the bow tied onto the back or stitched onto the back. So you tie the bow yourself. And this is our melamine collection, which I was inspired by some of my mum's old china. But we put in our butterfly into the pattern. And then we also, the stripy bee is a big part of the Joanna Buchanan collection. So we also put the stripy bee in there. Oh, and here's the stripy bee as well. So this is the bee embroidered on straw. And then this is one of our beautiful new tablecloths, which is the golden bee. So this is white linen with these beautiful golden bees kind of embroidered all over the tablecloth. So I was feeling very springy and loving this palette of kind of acid pastels. They're not sickly sweet. They've got a little bit more punch to them. This is the aqua with the pink, which I love that color combination. I think it's strong. It's not insipid, but it's not too bold or overwhelming. And then actually this is one of our new capice trays that I designed. And I love the kind of luminescent look of the capice. And then these are our candlesticks. So you can see, like, I really try to use what I design to make sure that it is useful, it is beautiful, and hopefully will set an amazing table, and you can have lots of fun parties with our things. It's so funny, I did a career day at school this week for my children, so I'm very much in career mode at the moment. I knew I always loved fashion and design, and even as a child I was always, tie-dyeing my mother's sheets and turning them into tablecloths and painting fabric and decorating cardboard boxes for my stuffed animals' houses and stuff like that. So I always had a passion for design. I followed that through at university, and then through an internship got a job in London and worked in London in a corporate environment for 6 years, moved to New York and worked in multiple corporate environments as a designer. And then I lost my job around 8 years ago, and a friend of mine who I had worked with said, "Oh, come to and do something for me for One Kings Lane." And I said, "Oh, not really interested, taking a bit of a break." And she said, no, you have to, and I said, "Only if it's my own brand, only if it's Christmas ornaments." And she was like, "You're out of your mind. You've never, you don't know anything about the Christmas market." But I said, "No, that's what I want to do." God knows where that came from. But anyway, and it started with, so One Kings Lane was my very first customer. And then it just grew. You kind of get a bit of an ego about things, and you're like, "Oh, people like what I'm doing," as for myself, not working for someone else. And the business started, as I said, 8-9 years ago. And now we're with amazing clients around the world. We're in Neiman Marcus, we're in Bloomingdale's. We have a very deep relationship with Harrods in the UK. And we've got some fabulous boutiques in Monaco and South America. So it's an amazing, I feel like everything's come full circle because I feel like a child of the world, and now our brand is a global brand. So it's cool. Okay, so this is my studio, which is actually incredibly tidy. And my children, who are always, shaming me for having such a messy studio, would actually agree that it's tidy. Although I know to the naked eye, everyone's probably looking at it going, "Oh my God, how can anyone work in a space like this?" But I have everything here that I need. And I know where everything is, which is actually, does sometimes impress people. But I have all my inspiration. I have ideas on the go. I have samples in here. And I think part of the way I work is having the juxtaposition of things just kind of lying around. And sometimes as a creative, you'll be like, "Oh my God, I never thought of putting that with that." And it's only just because you had those two things sitting in your office at the same time together, and it just kind of jogs your memory or jogs your brain in a way that wouldn't have been jogged if you were in a really spotlessly clean place. So anyway, I have all my working things on here. It's kind of divided by sections. I have a lot of my vintage pieces here. You can see these are works in progress. I have tons and tons of reference. I mean, this is just like an Aladdin's cave for someone that loves color and texture. These are like a bajillion ribbon options from my trips to India. I have all my Pantone color books and all my reference books. I have images of all my photo shoots that we've done, packaging, again, more textiles and just, things that will inspire me that I'll kind of dig through and find. And then this is my, oh my God, please don't look at this. We'll just do a real slow pan across that because I meant to tidy it and I didn't. But I've got some really pretty things over here that I keep meaning to kind of do. I keep meaning to get a cool lampshade for that light. I've got some nice plants in here. I also love dead flowers as well. So you can see the hyacinths are a little bit dead, but I love the smell so much. I refuse to get rid of them until they're completely falling apart. And then I love all the details in here. Like I've got my pens in my pots. This is some of the jewelry that I'm working on with some of the stones that I've got that I'm playing with. And then I always love to have fresh flowers in here as well. So that really gives me a lift. And this light we got for our wedding from ABC Carpet. And to me, it is just one of the most beautiful things in the world. I love, again, the glass. The orange in there is so strong. I love it. And then this table we actually had made for the studio space so that it's got the work countertop and then all this amazing shelving underneath. Because you can see I do need a lot of space for my things. Yeah, I think people come to the house and they always say, "I feel like I'm on holiday." And one day, I mean, we've got a really pretty pool, a really old kind of like black pool, and a really cool old pool house. And people kind of go out there and they just can't believe that, to your point, they're just an hour from New York. But we work a lot in the garden. We really try and create this feeling of just beauty. We really do. It matters to us. We like living surrounded by beautiful things and having the greenery so close. So I think for me, I love color. That's number one. I love pattern, and I love the play of color and pattern. And I hate things that look too cookie cutter. And I like the feeling of an eclectic, layered home. Brad and I, Brad's my husband, and I both have collected pieces over the years. So things in here mean something to us. And to me, it's about putting things together in a way that works, not buying things to fit the situation. So this is the kitchen in our house. You can see the ceilings get a little bit lower. But again, we painted everything white, white, white. This is one of Brad's paintings, which I love. I think it's such a brilliant spot for it. And I love the drama of the black and the olive. So we put in the kitchen. It's IKEA, so high-low, with the wooden butcher block top and the cool kind of gray cabinets. I love the warmth of that. And then we put in, we originally put in the tiles, and I couldn't figure out what else we wanted to do. The tiles were cool, but it wasn't enough. So then I think about 2 years ago, I said, you know what, let's put a shelf in, because I love the look of a shelf in a kitchen. And then let's just go bonkers with the wallpaper, which is what we did. And when Brad saw it, he was like, there's a key in there. It's like crazy. But I was like, I love it, because it feels, again, like the garden coming inside. And then on our center island, I just have all this greenery. So you can see it's not really a chef's kitchen. I would say it's a gardener's kitchen. And then I've got, things that I'm trying to keep alive here. I'm not the best houseplant person, but I'm doing my best. And then we've got more books. Again, like we just can't seem to have enough space for all our books. And this is a really cool table that I found on eBay. And then we had the plexiglass cut to size and shape. And then these are just kind of fun IKEA chairs. But I love how transparent this whole corner is. It just feels very light. And I think that's what we needed in this room. And then this is a really cool piece that we got. I can't remember where we got it, but we replaced it's like a vintage filing cabinet, but we replaced the panels with mirrors so that it was reflecting of light. And then we've got our bar in here, which is kind of fun. And then I'm not going to show you what's in the other sections, but it's just like kitchen stuff. And then this is a really lovely piece that Brad made years ago before we met, but we added the glasses kind of later. So and I like to think that that's me and that's him. And I like having these moments of very sort of simple, quiet, textural feeling and color in amongst all the craziness of the colors of the house, So I think having the quiet moments is nice. And I didn't take down, my son just turned 13, and I love these crazy silver balloons. But normally this corner is a little bit quiet because we just have one sort of single lamp. But again, silver and gold, love it together. So anyway, yeah, so that's our kitchen. And then, this is a really beautiful light that I found. I think this was an eBay find as well. I needed to find something that was really shallow because the ceilings are low in here. But I wanted something really sparkly and really dramatic. And I just love that. We actually ended up shipping it from Germany, I think. But it is so perfect in here. Those giant kind of gobby glass stones at the top. It's so cool. So my obsession with wallpaper has not stopped and continues everywhere. So we ended up wallpapering up the stairs and in the hallway upstairs this fabulous blue and white stripe, which I just think looks so fresh. And it was so funny. I realized when I just was doing this, I'm wearing the blue and white striped shirt as well. So I feel like I'm blending in. But I love all the different angles of the wallpaper when you start cutting it around the corners. But we literally wallpapered everywhere we could. when I set about designing a space, I always think about the mood that I'm trying to create. Is it moody? Is it dramatic? Is it, cozy? And I think this house is very optimistic feeling, and I think it's the color and the light in here that's so lovely. And when people come in, I love that reaction of like, wow, people don't expect an old house to look like this. So I think I love the happiness about the house. I think it's just got a really good vibe. So this is the bedroom, and it's not very big, but I love it because it just is so light and bright. You can see we don't have any curtains. I love going to sleep at night, seeing the moon outside and the stars. And I love waking up to the natural light and the birds singing. And this is totally, it's my sanctuary. I come up here, I find it so relaxing. I love my bed. I love all the textiles on here. We are not a white bed person, but these are things that I've had made from my travels to India. These are textiles that I picked up over the years. This is a really cool piece because this is a piece of fabric that I found in Japan when I was there, and I had it upholstered onto the lucite base. So I love, again, the juxtaposition of a sort of 60s lucite piece with crazy Japanese vintage OB fabric on there. These glass balls, again, glass balls were given to me or given to us as wedding presents, which I think are so lovely in here. And really the color inspiration for the room came from this gorgeous vase, which is the green, the orange, and the pink. And I just think this color palette is so gorgeous. I love it. And you can see I look out over the garden, so I can see what's going on, and I really feel very connected to our outside space in this room. We have rugs in the reading room and the TV room, but like upstairs, we painted all the floorboards white high gloss, and I love the feel of that, and I love the texture of it. So yes, I think in smaller rooms, like this bedroom, we didn't need a rug. I think I like the sort of feeling of sort of spareness and the extreme amount of white in here. I think is really nice. I have no idea, but I mean, my husband is 6 foot and he can get in and he's okay. I'm 5'6", so it's probably 7 foot, probably, I think. So I'm going to quickly show you my son's room because it's a work in progress, but he's just moved into this room. We're just decorating it for him. And he organized and picked out all the shelves. He decided he wanted these shelves to show his shoes. You can see how neat and tidy he is. Everything's very organized. And he started doing some drawings of shoes. Here are his shoe cleaning kits. Like, it doesn't end with the shoes. So anyway, he is so thrilled to have this space and to have it be his own. And I'm so happy that he's decorating it how he wants it. Home means to me somewhere where I can truly relax, although here we are filming in the home today. So it's a little bit of a workspace too, but I love at the end of the night closing the gate, and I love a fire, and it's really somewhere where you can relax and read a book, be with the family. And I like that there's quiet times and there's busy times too. You know, there's when everyone's around and it's noisy and fun and it's kind of slightly chaotic, that's brilliant. But I also love it when it's really quiet and really still. So I think, you know, home is a space that can embrace all aspects of your life, really.
Today on Homeworthy, we're visiting the enchanting and peaceful home of DIY pro Dana Dorr, the content creator behind the blog Adored House. Although her home was built in 2010, she purposefully gave it the aesthetic of an old home, adding intentional architectural features and infusing it with a collection of vintage finds. Enjoy! You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. To shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy episodes, be sure to check out the product links below for amazing furniture, accessories, and more.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Dana Dorr from Farmingdale, New Jersey. Come on in. So here we are in the entryway. Something that I really wanted when we were house shopping is some type of a grand entryway, so I could have a grand entryway table with flowers, and that didn't happen. This house had pretty much the smallest entryway out of all the houses we looked at, but I just knew that meant that I had to be creative and think about how can I maximize this space. So I found this mirror on Facebook Marketplace, and it was grand and it had character, and while it like really doesn't function as a mirror very well, it does reflect the light and makes the space seem larger. And it had a little bit of character and age, and I just thought to add a little shelf would kind of complete the feel and give this a real entryway feel. So the shelf holds some decorative items. We throw our keys or our glasses down there. Our beach bags are here, towels ready to go outside if the girls want to go in a neighbor's pool or set up a picnic, my hat for all the soccer games. It's a small area, but mighty. And this rug, I get questions all the time about this rug on my Instagram. It's an Etsy find, and it takes a beating. We've had this for 2 years, and it still looks brand new, but it traps all the dirt. It's where the shoes get dumped when all the neighborhood kids come over. We've lived here for 8 years. We bought it in 2016. It was hard. It was hard to find everything that was on our list. I wanted a house with age and character, but we wanted a really good school system and quiet streets. And ultimately we led to buying this house, which was a practical buy over a aesthetic buy for me. But it was a blank slate, and we've been able to do lots of projects in here to really make it our own. Yeah, so I installed the board and batten in here. I put the little planks on the walls because I knew I wanted some texture. I knew I wanted some visual interest. And also the ceilings in here are only 8 feet tall. So I was like, how can I incorporate a lot of vertical lines to make this space seem larger? So that was a really quick and easy DIY. It was one of my first DIYs I ever did, and we still love it. I know when we moved in here, it was at the height of shiplap. Everyone was putting shiplap everywhere because Joanna Gaines was telling everybody to, but something in me, some intuition said like, shiplap's gonna phase out, do something a little bit more timeless. So that's when I hit Pinterest, and I was like, I think a board and batten direction will be great for here. So yeah, like I said, adds texture to the walls, but also elongates the space and makes it feel a lot taller than it really is. So this house was a total blank canvas when we looked at it. I mean, there was almost zero character whatsoever, except for this newel post. And that is what I was like very excited about walking in. I said the previous homeowners who built this house, they left everything very blank, but they did infuse some character with this newel post. And this really dictated the direction that I put the style of the house in. So very timeless, classic, a little bit of a New England flair to it. So now just off the entryway, I'll take you into our dining room. This was actually the first space that we did when we moved into this house. I had a pretty strong vision. I knew I wanted the board and batten on the walls. I have pictures of myself doing this space when I was, let's see, probably like 8 months pregnant, huge belly with Cece in here with a nail gun, just learning how to use a nail gun for the first time too, installing the board and batten trim. And it took forever, and there's lots of mistakes. And 8 years later, there's a lot of things I want to revisit in this space, but it functions really well for us. We are the hosts when it comes to holidays. So I could squeeze the whole family around this table. Lots of meals, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, they're all here at the Doorhouse. My husband's a chef, so everybody wants to come and eat here. But this room, it's been fun to kind of watch it evolve as my taste has evolved with living here. And like I said, I do want to go in eventually and do some tweaks, but it's just nice to see that for some furniture that I picked out 8 years ago, I'm still loving. Like these chairs, I bought them at Anthropologie 8 years ago, and they are still my favorites. They still work great. This cabinet here, this is one of my top Facebook Marketplace finds. It was a china cabinet that came out of a home in Little Silver, New Jersey, and it came out of an old Victorian home. I had been looking something for this space for a while, and this popped up on Marketplace. The woman told me to come and see it, and she was selling her home. She had restored this piece herself, so beautifully done, and basically she was interviewing me to see if I was the right person to buy this piece from her. She said she had some other people, and she asked them what their intentions were with it. And they were like, oh, I'm gonna paint it for my living room, or I'm going to do something else to it. She said, Dana, I will sell this to you as long as you promise never to paint it. And the thought has crossed my mind a little bit, but I just feel like I owe it to the woman that sold this to me, that put so much hard work and love into it, to keep it as is. So I treasure it. I love it. And I love the story that came along with it. And I love that I have a little piece of another woman in the community who loves furniture and DIY as much as I do. There's nothing in here that's super special. A lot of things I've just collected over time. I knew that since I wasn't going to paint it, that I had to change the direction for what I was going to put in it. And so I just started collecting a lot of ironstone, a lot of white ceramics, so that it would pop off of this English pine finish. So a lot of it's been thrift store finds, yard sale finds, just white pieces that will pop off of the wood really nicely. Something that I was really drawn to when we started decorating this house were botanical charts. And so I do have a number of them in the room. I just love the kind of scientific nature feel about them. I think our home really reflects the things that we love. And that's the outdoors, that's the beach, that's water, that's flowers, it's nature. And in here, because we painted the room a shade of green, I just felt like this would be the room that would represent the plants and the outdoor nature. So there are a lot of little like scientific leaf references through the space. So this was, again, one of our first purchases. I am just very proud of myself that I picked out pieces that I still like, because sometimes I look back at my Pinterest boards and I'm like, what was I thinking? But this light fixture, I bought it from Schoolhouse Electric. They no longer make it. I've seen some people try to do DIYs of it, but it's really cool. It's twisted wire and it's adjustable, but it kind of lends to that scientific look that I was going for with the botanical charts. So last year I started collecting these Majolica begonia leaf plates. I was just really drawn to the colors and the glazes, and Majolica is highly collectible. So I try to find the ones that are really cheap and chipped that nobody wants anymore so that I can grow my collection. But I love the colors, and I definitely think these will lend to the future of this room. I've started to hang them because they work really well in this space, but I just love like the blues and the greens and the pops of pink. So now we're gonna go through the main hallway in the house, and this will take us back to our kitchen area and our living room. Again, I did the board and batten in here. It really elongates the space, brightens it up, and makes a nice transition into our kitchen and living room. So this area was by far the biggest transition in our home. And it's funny, I was thinking about this the other day, but the vision for this space transformation came to me pretty much as soon as I saw the house. And what that was, when we bought the house, it was just this little wall that's popping out here. and all of this was open. So it was just kind of this weird partition wall that separated the basement door from the garage door. And there was no symmetry. And something that I love about old homes is that there is a lot of symmetry. Nowadays, it's more open concept style. Symmetry is not as important, but really, like, if you look at an old home, they paid so much attention to symmetry inside and out. So I knew immediately when I saw this space that we would have to, or have someone build another wall to make it symmetrical. And I sat with that idea for a long time. We couldn't find people to build it. 2020 came, we still couldn't find anybody to build it, so we just decided to take that on ourselves. And it was not as crazy as we thought it was going to be, but that definitely opened up a can of worms. It's kind of like you give a mouse a cookie. That led to a lot more renovations in this space. So once this wall was built to match the other one and have that symmetry, I decided to build a transom to add some more character to that space. So none of this is original. This was all hand built by me, but I even made all of those little glass windows because I had a lot of time during the pandemic when I was home. So this was a very budget-friendly project. I originally looked into buying those windows to put up there, and I think each window was going to be over $200, and I was able to make each for about $35. So super proud of this. This changed the total look and feel of my home, and I think it's it's definitely one of the most liked views on my Instagram page. It's just the transition from where this was to what it is now, I'm super proud of. So once this space was divided up by building this other wall, I was able to utilize this dead space in the middle. The previous owners just had this open, and it was nice to have that openness, but we really wanted a kitchen table. We do use the dining room a lot, but we wanted a space where the four of us can just sit and have dinner during the week, or the girls can sit and have breakfast. So this whole area didn't really even exist or wasn't utilized. So I had a rectangular table in here, but it never really fit. It was always a little bit hard to navigate around, especially since this is such a thoroughfare in the home. And I guess it was about 2 years ago, I was scouring Facebook Marketplace for a round English pine table for what felt like months. I finally found one, but it was 3 or 4 hours away in upstate New York. But it just so happened that the week that I found it, the girls had 2 days off of school for some break. And I went online, I looked to see if I could find us like an Airbnb or a little overnight hotel or something so that I could plan a trip around getting this table without making it seem like I'm just dragging my family 3.5 hours to go get a table. And I did it. I was able to book a hotel, which was a really fun hotel, get everybody packed, and get us up there within a couple hours. And then the next day I just said, well, guys, I happened to find a table on Facebook Marketplace. Let's go pick it up. So totally meant to be the perfect shape for this space. And it allows like a lot of great movement around here because kids are always in through the front door, out through the back door, running to the kitchen. So this is a piece that I will treasure forever. And I think it's totally meant for our home. And then the wallpaper in here. So I put up the wallpaper last year. Yellow and white stripes are kind of my thing. You'll notice, or you might notice them quite a bit through our house. But I've always loved how yellow and white stripes feel like summer. I'm definitely a summer girl. I have a July birthday. We live close to the beach. And for our wedding 13 years ago, our little theme was yellow and white stripes. So I just love the idea of being able to incorporate that little nod to our wedding into our home forever. So this is Farrow and Ball wallpaper. It was took one roll just to accent the space and add a little bit of color and a little bit of personality. Well, maybe a lot of bit of personality, but we love it. So the curtains, I love block print, Indian block print. I have a lot of clothing. There's something that's like cultural, textural, really beautiful about it. And I found this fabric on Etsy and very inexpensive. Like I think all the fabric together maybe cost me $35. And I made the curtains by lining them, and they just add so much personality and life to the space. And even in the dead of winter, they just make you happy and make you realize that summer's not too far away. Okay, so everybody's favorite room in the house, my favorite room in the house. I poured my heart and soul into this space. Hopefully we could share with you guys a before picture, but this is definitely the largest transformation. So I mentioned that this was the only wall here, the transom wasn't there, and then that wall didn't exist. So this space was pretty wide open, and there was only one window in the center of the space when we bought the home. And again, the first time I saw it, I knew that this house needed a fireplace. That was one of those items on my must-have list for a new house, and this house didn't have it. So of course, when I came in, I was thinking about how can we incorporate a fireplace into this home? Because to me, a fireplace is what says home. So I had this idea to replace the center window with a gas fireplace and then flank the fireplace with 2 new windows, which I thought was a pretty simple ask of a contractor. But in 2016, when we bought the house, I had numerous contractors come out and then just never get back to us with a quote or anything. So, and at that time, my DIY skills were very low. Like I would have never imagined building something like this myself. But 4 years later, I had done a lot of little projects in the house, like put up crown molding, put up the board and batten. I started hanging wallpaper, and I got the crazy idea that I could build a fireplace myself, and I did. So I did everything from the framing to laying the brick face, all of the trim, building out the mantle. We had just a professional hook up the gas line, but it's pretty much one of my favorite things I've ever made. It's just so warm and cozy, and it works in the winter time. It warms up almost the whole house. I love decorating it for every season, and it's just the focal point of this room. And there was an image that I had in my inspiration board when I was planning this space, where it had a similar style mirror over the fireplace. So I knew I wanted to do that. I just love the look. And again, the mirror would make the space feel larger because it's not big. I think this room is like 14 by 14, maybe even smaller. And when I put the mirror on top of the mantle, I immediately realized that it reflected the ceiling. And some designers would say, oh, swap out the mirror, put a piece of art, you don't want to reflect the ceiling. But I saw that as a new and exciting challenge to do something fun with my ceiling. The first thing was to find a really cool light fixture that would reflect in the mirror. And I found this amazing mirrored fixture on eBay. It's made to look like an old style fixture. It definitely has like a little bit of a industrial feel to it. But again, I just love that it's reflecting more light, making the space feel larger than it is, and has a really beautiful reflection in the mantle mirror. The second thing is, once the room was done, it was feeling a little bland, and I love color. So I was thinking about how I could incorporate more color into the space without painting the walls a color, because I didn't really like this off-white. So that's when I thought to paint the ceiling blue. I don't know if you can tell, but it's a very faint blue. It actually is old Southern tradition to paint a ceiling blue to rid the home of evil spirits. Or a lot of times it happens on old front porches. So I thought, why not pull that idea in here? And I love it. I love the reflection you get in the mirror. I love the contrast with the crown molding and the faux beam strips that I installed. Or it adds another layer to this room. And it really took it from being kind of bland and simple to kicking it up a notch. A major budget saver in here, which I think made a huge difference, is the wood paneling on the walls. So I love the look of tongue and groove paneling. Every home that I save pictures of or kind of drool over in magazines all had this gorgeous tongue and groove planking on the walls. And I looked high and low and could not find a budget-friendly option for myself. It was all super expensive, and probably upwards of $1,400 to $2,000 to cover the walls in regular tongue and groove planking. So I decided, keep in mind I had a lot of time on my hands, this was during the pandemic, that I would take really inexpensive plywood and cut the grooves in the wood with a router. So every one of these grooves is a groove that I made with a router. It was extremely time consuming. I did come up with a jig where it would be a little bit easier for me, but yeah, that's something I'm proud of. I would never have the time to do that again, but it really took a project that would have cost around $2,000. It probably cost me $80 to do the whole room. So I will never do that again. Actually, I did it in one other room, I'm lying, but it really makes a difference, I think. It just adds a layer of texture and personality. And sometimes when I think about designing my home, I like to think of it as like a ship captain's room or ship captain's home. And I think a ship captain would have all tongue and groove walls throughout their home. Also, I am not a fan of just plain drywall. As we go through my home, there aren't many walls left that are just plain painted drywall. So I just think a tongue and groove or a wood option like this is a nice way to take a house from just basic builder grade and make it feel more custom. So this is my longest running collection, my clipper ships. And some of them are original paintings and some of them are prints, but I've had this collection now for over 15 years. And the reason I was inspired to collect them is that I was at the Armory Show in New York City, which is an art show. I had to be in college still. No, I didn't have a home. I was just collecting things just to collect them, while still probably living with my parents. And John Darien had this installation at the Armory Show, which was all of these vintage clipper ship paintings, but the water line on all of the paintings was lined up down this long row. And I always said, oh, one day I'm going to have all these paintings and I'm going to, in my long hallway in my home, line up all the water lines. So when we bought this house, pretty much knowing that this will be our forever home, I knew I wasn't going to have that long hallway. So I said, I have this collection. It's a pretty amazing focal point when they're all together. So I came up with this orientation and I love them. And people still will send me pictures of ship paintings when they're out antiquing or thrifting and ask me if I want another. But I think I closed the door on this collection. I think it's complete. My whole house, my design philosophy is just comfort. Beautiful design, storied design, but also comfort, because I share this home with my husband and my two daughters who are 11 and 7, and I want them to be comfortable here. I don't want them to feel like they're visitors in their own home. So I want them to be able to throw their feet down on the coffee table or lounge out on the sofa without feeling like they're gonna mess something up. So everything in my home, especially in this space, is super durable, washable, and already weather worn. This coffee table is, it was an old ship hatch door. I bought this on Marketplace too, but you cannot, this table is indestructible. Nothing, unless you throw gasoline on it and set it on fire, you can't do anything to this table. You can spill on it, put your feet up on it. So I knew that I would have to incorporate some time-worn pieces in order to make this house look textured and layered, but still be comfortable and make sense for our family. And then our sofa is probably, I think, one of the only new pieces, I think one of 3 new pieces that I bought for this home. Everything else in the house is secondhand. And I spent so much time going over different sofa options. Like, we moved in here in August, and I think by almost the beginning of October, I still hadn't made up my mind. And we were sitting on like lawn chairs basically in here. So my husband's like, you have to pick something. But I'm glad I took my time. I knew I wanted an English roll arm style sofa. I looked at lots of pictures and books and on Pinterest, and everything I saw that was really timeless in my mind was an English roll arm. So the next thing was finding an English roll arm that would stand up to my young family. We don't eat in here. That's one of my only rules as far as how we use our space. We have eating rooms and we have non-eating rooms, but still they come home sweaty from soccer, or I'll even sit and have a cup of tea here, and I don't want anything to feel too fragile. So this sofa was designed with Krypton fabric so that it resists spills and stains. I can take the slipcovers off and throw them in the wash, and they're good as new the next day. I mean, we've had some pretty serious accidents as far as the sofa goes, and everything has come out in the wash. So yes, while everything looks very pulled together, there's a lot of flexibility and there's a lot of room for things to be scrubbed down, washed, and to live up to my family. So the blinds I have in here are chick shades. They're made in India. They've become pretty popular in the design world. And I pretty much had the room all together, and I just knew I needed some more texture and a little bit of print, because I had the sofa, which is pretty large, being a single color, the walls being a single color, some of the other accent furniture. And I had made these curtains as well. And I had some print in here, but I was just craving like some natural texture. So I found these, and they just totally fit the bill. They're made out of bamboo, and they have this really interesting threading design. And while they're not great for privacy, they're great if somebody wants to take a nap in here and dim the space. And I just love the texture that they bring to the house. Since I've gotten them in here, I've added them to a number of other rooms in the house as well. Oh, and then this piece. This is probably my second favorite Facebook Marketplace find. Our TV hides in here. I am a very big advocate for hiding your television. I think my biggest design pet peeve is a TV out and about. So I definitely wanted a piece that I could keep our TV in, and I wanted it to feel beautiful and feel like it went with everything else in our home and didn't take away from the beauty of the space. So I knew I needed an antique. So I searched high and low on Facebook Marketplace until I found this, actually not far from my parents' house. My parents live in Delaware, and I will occasionally look on their Facebook Marketplace when I'm not finding what I need here. And my parents are retired. My dad has a pickup truck, and they're big supporters of buying secondhand, buying antiques. So I knew when I found this, it wouldn't be a huge ask to ask my dad to pick this up. So he did, and it's absolutely perfect. Like I said, our TV is stored in here. This is probably a mess, but all of our board games and things are down here. It is such a well-made piece, and it gets everyday use, but it's so beautiful as well. And I think the story of this one is that it came out of a candy store. So in Ocean City, Maryland, it was in a candy store. And when we first got it, there was some old candy pieces that were stuck like underneath some of the shelves. So that was pretty cool. This chair, it's an Astrid chair from Anthropologie. I used to work for Anthropologie, and that was like the iconic chair. It was the current, or the CEO at the time, he designed the chair and it was his favorite chair. So it's kind of one of those things where you worked for the company, you wanted that chair. So I got it at a furniture auction and I loved it. And it was like covered in bright orange floral fabric, which I really tried hard to make it work. At one point, it was in my daughter's nursery, but when we were doing this room, I knew that I just needed to put that chair down here. It was like the right size, the right style. I love the turn feet, how they matched the same feet on the sofa. So I bit the bullet and replaced the orange floral fabric with a really pretty soft blue. So no regrets there. Okay, so now I'm gonna take you upstairs. Up here we have our bedrooms and my office. This first room here, up on the left, this is my two daughters' rooms. This is what we call the sister suite. So when we bought the house, this was just kind of a bonus room, and we kept it that way for quite some time, where we had it as a guest room, an office, a playroom. It was just chaos. I would have to be taking Zoom calls on my computer, and there would be Barbie dolls in the background or laundry on the guest room bed. And I really just thought this would be a great room to put both of my girls in. My youngest was kind of transitioning out of her nursery, which was a smaller room. And I just was looking for a way to kind of contain the chaos that comes along with kids. Like I said earlier, I want my kids to enjoy their home and be comfortable here making messes, but I also want the messes a little bit contained. So everything is in here. They have an attached playroom, which it's pure chaos, but that's how they like it. So they just have this suite to do their thing in. They have their little dance parties and sleepovers, and we had so much fun making this for them. So here is really where I flexed my trim work muscle and picked up some new skills. This was just a drywall box, essentially, and the eaves were just so cool. I just saw so much potential with doing something fun here with wallpaper. But the room didn't really start to come together until I found these beds on Facebook Marketplace. Another amazing find. And I drove all the way up to Connecticut to get them while the girls were at school one day. But I just couldn't say no to them. And after I got these, the room really came together. There's this like gorgeous inlay of this flower design on here. And when I got them and I was starting to come up with the design for the room, I just knew I didn't want the beds to be overshadowed. We went through so many different wallpaper samples, and then when we saw this, it was just kind of this magical moment where we were like, these are meant to be together. Some of the flower designs in the bed are almost identical to some of the flower designs and the leaf designs in this wallpaper. And what's cool about this wallpaper is that it's a William Morris design, so it's totally timeless. But this was a collection that was redone by Ben Pentreath, where he redid these classic William Morris patterns in these fun, almost retro colors. And like once the sample came in the mail, there was no question that this was the perfect one. The wallpaper colors feel youthful because there's lime green and there's orange and there's peach, but it still goes along with the whole house aesthetic. And it was fun with the girls to go through and say like, okay, so now these are the beds, this is the wallpaper. What other colors should we pull out of the wallpaper to put into the room? And they both agreed on going with a shade of green for the wainscoting on the walls. They love Groot, the character from Guardians of the Galaxy, and we thought that this room was like a Groot green. And actually, when we mixed the paint color, it didn't quite come out right, so we ended up having to mix a custom shade for this room, and we call it Groot green now because it's a custom shade and it looks like Groot. But yeah, I just like want them to have fun in here. As much as I've decorated this space, they've also layered in their own personalities, all of their soccer trophies, all of their books. We're all avid readers in this house. So I love that they've made this space their own. They're so opinionated, which I'm so glad, and I know where they get it from. But they really gave me a lot of ideas, and I know my little one was really into Frozen when we started this, and you know, she loved Elsa's bedroom, which I feel like little elements of this kind of feel like that. It has that Nordic look to it in the wallpaper. They wanted a chandelier, so I made sure we put a chandelier in here. But it's just so fun. It's our favorite room as a family to hang out in. Just the other night, they've been like pretending to be in a dance school together. So they did a little recital here, and my husband and I had front row seats. So it's a nice room. I really feel like them sharing a room has brought them together. So, and I think that's the thing too with like kids' room design is like, yeah, you want it to look picture perfect and have everything match. But I think when I saw this wallpaper, I just saw so much opportunity for them to layer in all their crazy kid stuff and it not feel chaotic. So we have Barbie dolls and soccer trophies, and it all feels good together because there's so much color. This room is just above the garage, so we could access that from below. So I thought rather than just have this kind of weird, crazy panel, I made a little built-in bookcase for them to store some of their books. That's another question I get asked a lot on social media is like, where are all the toys? And they're all behind that door. And that's their space, so we're going to keep it private for them. But I just think when you're thoughtful with design about having places that are just designated for toys, it eliminates chaos in the house. In the kitchen, we've always just had a small little play kitchen, and that's it. That's it for the toys on the main floor. And because we only have the play kitchen, it's all they play with all the time. Like they're 7 and 11 and they'll still play with that play kitchen because it's the only thing that's down there. So we're less is more when it comes to toys, but we know it's inevitable. So having a space for them really helps. So my blog is Adored House. It got started in, I guess, 2018 is when I started, and I was encouraged to start it by a neighbor who had moved into the neighborhood who had her own following, and she just said, get on there, it's fun. And I didn't even know this community of home-loving people existed on social media, and now it's primarily what I use social media for. So the blog is called Adored House, and so is our Instagram account, and it's a play on our last name, Door, and really like adored house, loving a house. Like I just want to be able to show people what putting love and hard work into a house can create. It can make your dream house. Very much about loving the one you're with, because I didn't necessarily want this house because it was so plain and simple, but I knew if I put love into it, it would become the house we wanted and the home we dreamed about. So this is our upstairs hall, and I wallpapered this hallway pretty early into our time here. I knew I was just starting to dabble with wallpaper, and I was a little scared about how permanent it is, but I made sure when I chose a style that it would feel timeless, but also up here I wanted to feel a little bit neutral. And since we are somewhat close to the beach, I wanted something that felt like outside and nautical. So I found this really cool wallpaper that has, it almost looks like etching, but it has like little seagull and cloud designs in it. And it just feels soft and beautiful. And I don't know, there's something that it makes almost like a lightness. Like I see this wallpaper and it just makes me feel calm. And when we got the wallpaper done and we started adding character to this space, I said, you know what, I buy a lot of antique art. I love having photography in our homes, but I'm a trained portrait painter. So I was like, I have to have some of my artwork in my home. My mom has more of my artwork in her home than I do. So in 2017, I think it was, I started making this painting when my girls were actually these ages, probably 2 and 5 at the time. And this moment with them in their little tutus actually happened in this very spot when they were little. So it's a way of just commemorating how little they were when we moved into this house, and how much the house has changed, because all white walls in the background, that's definitely changed. But we love having this piece here. It took me a very long time to complete because I'm a busy lady, but it felt really good over the last year to just sit and complete this. And we love having this captured memory in the same spot that it took place. I also built all the framing for it, and it makes such a beautiful focal piece at the end of our hallway. So while I said the house was pretty bare bones and like a blank canvas when we bought it, it has a laundry chute, which was like such a game changer for us, because there's nothing better than like cleaning up and just throwing it all down into the basement. So we love that feature. It gets a lot of use. So this is the most recently designed space in our home, and this is my office. The end of last year, I created a company with my friend Lindsay, and we have a boutique branding and marketing agency, and I needed a space just for me. So this was my youngest daughter's room when she was little, and once they moved into the sister suite together, I knew that this would be a great space for an office because it's kind of small. But I wanted a serene color. I love the idea of floor to ceiling beadboard. I did this in one other room in my house, and it just, again, like elongates the space, makes it feel super tall, way taller than it actually is. And I wanted to add picture frame molding, which I plan on adding in more rooms in my house because it just instantly makes it feel more timeless and classic. And also, it leaves a lot less holes in the wall when you make a mistake. So this room, I just wanted to draw from colors and nature and just be super serene and soft. All of the artwork here I've collected over time. They're all pastoral scenes or landscape scenes, and it just feels calming. I love having this as my backdrop when I take video calls. It just feels peaceful and sweet, and it's a nice backdrop. This room was actually started, the whole scheme came together from this chair. So I bought this at a furniture auction, and it was made by an artist named Leslie Oshman, who lives in Amsterdam. And what she does is she takes antique paintings that she finds throughout Europe, and she adheres them to old mid-century modern furniture and then laminates them. So I've had this chair for a while. I knew I wanted it in my office, and it inspired the whole space. So now this is where my business partner sits when she comes and has meetings with me. But it's a great space. I love working in here. I really didn't need to buy much for this space at all. It's all things I've collected over time or repurposed. A lot of things reflect other previous chapters in my life, like this bird here. It's not real. This one's made out of paper, but I used to make these paper birds and sell them, and they sold through Anthropology. And this is like only one of 2 that I have left of the ones I made, but it's one of those things where it's like, I would never have the time to make something like this now. So I'm glad I have this memory of when I used to be able to like hand stitch individual feathers on a bird. But that's something that's been in storage because I really haven't had a spot for it. So I'm glad in our office, we have a spot for it now. There's also this picture here. That's my dad and I. He used to do craft shows when I was a kid, where he used to paint and sell these Santa Claus figurines, and I was his buddy. I would go with him everywhere. So that is me in my hat that's super 90s, and I used to make those hand-woven pot holders and sell them. So crafting has always been a huge part of my life. So now I'm going to take you into our primary bedroom. We've done a couple of things in that room just to make it feel really bright and light, and it's one of my favorite rooms in the house because it just feels so serene and peaceful, and it's a great room to wake up to. Probably the best compliment that I get on Instagram is that people think my house is old, because when we were looking for a home, I wanted an old house. It was the height of fixer-upper, Joanna Gaines fame. Everybody was just loving old houses again. I grew up watching This Old House, the show, and my mind was just set on having an old home. So buying this house that at the time was only 4 years old was a little bit heartbreaking for me. But my husband, who takes all the credit for it all, even though he's never picked up a power tool in his life, he said, why don't we buy this house that's only 4 years old, that has a new hot water heater, new appliances, the plumbing's fine, the electrical's fine, and you can make it look old. So he takes all the credit for the birth of Adored House. But he was right. And it's been so much fun to bring old pieces into this house and old house charm to make it look like the old house I wanted. But it still has the functionality, and it still has an updated air conditioning system so that it's comfortable in here. So it's been fun. So every decision that I make, it's looking back at an older home or taking references of books of older homes, because that's what I wanted. So it's been fun to try to make this look old. When we first moved in here, I thought I wanted a really dark space. So I painted the room dark gray, and the best way I can describe the color is like wet cement. And after about a year, I hated it. So not that long ago, I repainted it all bright white and then did the board and batten trim on the walls. I just recently added the wallpaper after having a sample for months and months, if not years, and I just love it. It was the perfect finishing touch for in here. Again, a lot of vertical stripes. It makes this space seem way taller than it is. Our ceilings are only 8 feet tall, but all the vertical stripes make it feel a lot taller. And yeah, I just love the mix of prints and patterns in here. It feels layered and eclectic, but because everything's a really nice soft color, it still feels really serene and peaceful. This bed, probably one of my most asked "where is that bed from?" questions on social media. And unfortunately for my followers, but fortunately for me, it was another Facebook Marketplace find. I got this for $25, and it is an amazing bed. I think like spindle details on a bed make it feel super old and timeless, but a lot of times antique spindle beds are really rickety, and they aren't made in queen sizes because that wasn't a standard bed size back in the day. So I was very lucky to find this queen headboard and footboard and side rails, and it is solid oak. Like, my husband saw this and he was like, is that bed, like, is it gonna fall apart? Is it even, do we have to be careful getting in and out of bed? But it is not. It's a beautiful solid oak bed. I did refinish it because it looked super orange when I bought it, but I always joke that if I one day have a furniture line, this is the first thing I'm going to reproduce because I get asked all the time where it's from. It was another piece that I found down in my parents' area, and my parents brought up here for me. So my dad drove about an hour from him to this kind of shady area to pick up this bed, but it was only $25, so well worth it in my book. Up here, I also have the chick shades again, the bamboo shades. They just add a nice texture and color. They pull out some of the warm tones that are in the bed, but they don't offer a lot of privacy at all, but this is our bedroom. So something that I did is underneath them, I installed roller shades that are activated through our Alexa. So behind the chick shades come the blackout roller shades. So we have the privacy and the light filtering, but we still have a nice like textural element in the room. This was another Facebook Marketplace find. I love this piece. I feel like I stole it from a guy. He was moving out to move in with his girlfriend, and he sold it to me for, I think, like $40. But it's a beautiful English chest that belonged to his mom. Yeah, but this is kind of our little hair station with the girls. So I have 2 girls with long blonde hair, so this is where I'm doing ponytails every day and combing out rats' nests. And then off of our bedroom here is our primary bath. So this was a project that I did in about 3 years ago. This was a full gut renovation, my first and only, and this was a serious test on my patience and my skill level. But this was a very dated bathroom with a kind of like a sliding door shower. Everything was beige. There was cracks in the tile. And I did a lot of work in here. So I did all the beadboard, added the trim. This piece is really cool. So this was actually a kitchen table that I cut up and kind of Frankensteined, I like to say, into a vanity. I found the vanity top on Marketplace too. And then I had this marble backsplash made. But yeah, this was a cool piece to make. I mean, everything from like the medicine cabinets to the light fixtures, those all came from Facebook Marketplace. But I love getting ready in here, and the shower is super spa-like, and every one of those tiles I hand laid. So I take a lot of pride in this space. And the floors were cool. So there was a really old crappy tile on here, and I destroyed those and got them out of here. And then I wanted to continue the hardwood look that goes through the house. So I actually put down these hardwood floors myself, and then I painted them. And just the nature of painted floors, they've gotten pretty beat up over time, but I love that. I just think it makes the house look older and more authentic and weather worn. So yeah, it's a great space. And this color is called Ionic Ivory by Sherwin-Williams. And when you look at the swatch, it looks white. And those are some of my favorite colors, where you're at the store and it looks white, but then when you actually get it on the walls, you see how much pigment is actually in that color. That's kind of my rule of thumb when it comes to picking most paint colors, is like, if it looks white in the store, but then you get it home and you get it on the walls, you see like how much of a punch that color actually holds. I think a lot of times people like make their paint color decision in the store, and it turns out totally different than what they think. So yeah. Something that we did a couple years ago too, to add some charm to the outside of the house, is I built window boxes for outside these front windows, and love the color that it brings in. It's like one of the nicest things to wake up. I made sure that I put red flowers in here this year because the hummingbirds come to them. So it's pretty cool to wake up in the morning and see the silhouettes of the hummingbirds buzzing around. And now we'll go outside and I'll show you the rest of the garden. So when we first bought the house, like the rest of it, the landscaping was really bland. There was really just a hedge of boxwoods, and I've always loved hydrangeas. So we chose limelight hydrangeas, which they got way bigger than we ever thought they would. They're almost 12 feet tall right now, but everybody knows us as the hydrangea house in the neighborhood when they ask where we live. So they're pretty magnificent, and we love them. And they bloom like this until about November. And then we cut them and have lots of dried flowers to give families and friends. So this garden, we just call it our side garden, but when we bought the house, none of this was here. There was just that one tree that has the lights in it back there. Everything we've added over the last 8 years. I am a big fan of getting discounted perennials at the end of the season. So like August, September, you get a discount perennial. It looks terrible, but then it comes back the next year and looks super beautiful. So I'd say 90% of this garden is composed of end of season sales. But we love this space. The arch was another Facebook Marketplace find. And then we recently put this little fence in to pull it all together. But we have birthday parties over here. We have garden parties. I host a garden party every August for some of my Instagram followers to come, and we have like a little potluck ladies' night. So it's just one of my favorite spaces. My grandmother used to say that gardening is like therapy, like getting your hands in the dirt, pulling weeds. It's very therapeutic. So a lot of therapy in this area. My husband also loves working outdoors and working in the garden. His grandfather was an avid grower of dahlia flowers. And he actually was a professional flower farmer and had the largest crop of baby's breath flowers in the world at one point. So it's in his genetics to be out here in the garden as well. So we just have a lot of fun. The girls get involved. They try very hard and resist picking my little apples over here. But it's just a great space and we love it. And it's fun to look at how much it's transformed and grown in the last 8 years since we've lived here. This is our tree of lights, where this is the only tree that was here when we moved in, and it's grown quite a bit. But we love having the lights in it, and it just adds like a magical, whimsical look back here. We do like doing a lot of entertaining, so the kids like to play under this tree. It just adds a little bit of ambiance. And our little tree swing is super cute. When I saw this tree and the way it was shaped, and knowing I would have 2 little girls, when we looked at this house, I just knew it would be perfect for a tree swing. So I have some of the cutest pictures of them on this, and I love when all the little kids come over and hop on. Last year, I built something that was on my bucket list. It's an outdoor shower. So we love this shower so much. We actually primarily shower in it in the summertime, whether we are working in the yard or we just went to the beach, like everybody's out here. And it's just an amazing feature to our home. And I think we've inspired about 10 other friends to build outdoor showers on their property. I think what makes a house a home is it being a reflection of you. For us, our home reflects our passions, what we like to do, who we are as people, our favorite colors, the town we live in, the area of New Jersey we live in, and it feels like us. It represents our times in our life, and I think anybody can have a house that's filled with stuff from Home Goods or other big box stores, and when you layer things into your home that you love and you've collected, it becomes a real reflection of you.
Today on Homeworthy, we're visiting a beautiful colonial home in Sharon, Connecticut, where we'll meet Dana and Fritz Rohn of Montage Antiques. Once in need of desperate repair, Dana and Fritz have spent the past several years renovating their home and decorating it with fabulous treasures. As passionate collectors for the past 40 years, the couple has accumulated wonderful antiques, everything from impressive works of art, some of which Fritz has painted himself, to worldly objects. Enjoy!
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Dana.
And I'm Fritz.
Welcome to our beautiful colonial home in Connecticut. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Dana Jennings-Roan. We're here at this wonderful house that we've renovated in Sharon, Connecticut, and we've filled it with antiques.
And I am Fritz Roan, Dana's husband, and very happy to be living in this beautiful house. We are in the antiques business and buy and sell antiques and love what we do, and we love old beautiful things and have collected many over the years and
Loads.
Have them in this house.
So I found this house because I'm a complete real estate-aholic. I can't let a house go by without looking at it, and I'm constantly scrolling on my phone looking at different opportunities around the area. And this one came on the market and it was a wreck, and we immediately jumped on it. It was just such an exciting moment. And as you can see, Lizzie is fascinated by the whole story, aren't you, dear?
When we first came to the house, we knew immediately that we loved it. We've always loved these early houses. They just have so much character and charm. And when you see one that is in really a dilapidated state, your heart cries out. You really feel like you have to do something. And we also just knew that the location was wonderful. It has a wonderful view out the back. It's on a quiet road. The house sits prominently high with a stone retaining wall in front, complete with stone gate posts and two of the ubiquitous aged sugar maple trees in front. It was just an iconic New England country house.
However, it was in horrible condition, as I said earlier. And one of my favorite stories about when we first bought the house, we decided to have an empty house party. So we invited all our friends, and we invited our friend Rebecca, who was our realtor. She's a very dear friend. And she and I and our other friend, Natalie, were standing in what was an upstairs bedroom, all of us with glasses of wine. And we were just chatting away, and suddenly the floor gave way, and Rebecca, the realtor, went right through the floor and her foot came out in the living room. The thing about this house was the last time that it got a good do-over was in the 80s. And they put on a kind of ubiquitous sunroom, and they decorated with lots of, avocado and harvest gold, and you get the picture. There was weird faded wallpaper, and there were lots of eagles involved. So it was pretty tacky and also incredibly tired. In the kitchen there was a chandelier that didn't have any shades, and they had little plastic cups over the bulbs. So it was also kind of scary.
This room here, the front hall, we actually did not have to do much in. It was dilapidated. An alteration that they had done was to have the closet put here, only it was way out here, and it was an enormous space filled with heat ducts. So one thing that we did is to push this wall back and make the front hall larger and more gracious, and still keep a closet, but give it kind of a jib door, to which I have wonderfully found a 19th century gilt mirror that fit it perfectly, but it still is a wonderfully spacious closet, but quite hidden, so that it's still a gracious front hall and large enough for a piece of furniture here, because formerly it was only this deep. So it enlarged this room wonderfully. And we also did the carpeting. This is one room where the floor was not in very good condition, and so we have carpeted it and the stairway with sisal, which works very well.
It also keeps the dogs from falling down the stairs.
Yes, always very important.
So we made a kind of funny decision in the very beginning. We'd always used Benjamin Moore paints, and we decided to try Faro and Ball. So as we walk around the house, you'll see we love a solid light color wall, and we like a contrasting trim. And so we chose all those colors from Faro and Ball, and perhaps I'll be able to remember the actual names of the colors or not. Anyway, my favorite part of this whole ensemble is the console and my beautiful lute player. The console is Italian, it's about 1780, and I just love all this beautiful original decorative paint. It's hard to find this stuff, it really is. And this is just perfectly scaled for this room. And she is just the epitome of who I want to be. She is so gracious and so peaceful and so creative with her beautiful gesture of her hand and those beautiful drapes.
It is a wonderful portrait, English, 1720, 1730, and I love its life size. It really is a real personality in the room. And although it's in a bit rough shape, it's got some discoloration here and some flaking here, it doesn't bother me a bit. She's got great character. She is alert, lively, with her wonderful hairdo interspersed with a rope of pearls and this beautiful lute, and her fingers are so beautifully done. A curious thing is that, and you don't notice it because it is mostly finished, but it is in fact not completely finished. If you look closely, you can see how the lute is completely a flat color compared with the fine modulation of the hands. And you can see he never got to the lute to give it any kind of color, any gesture, any sense of the nature of the wood that it is made out of. It is certainly unfinished, but the important parts are the hands, the face, the beautiful fabrics, the bit of light in the distance. It's a wonderful thing and really evocative of that period. We do love portraits. This is a series of 18th century prints of self-portraits of artists, which I've been collecting for I don't know how many years, 40 or 50 years, and they're rare. You don't find very many. I think I've got about 30 of them now.
Most of them are in the closet.
And they were put out by the Uffizi Museum in the 1700s. They are hand-colored copper plate engravings. And the Uffizi has an incredible collection of these paintings that were of self-portraits of artists, which of course is a wonderful theme. And they have been collecting them since the 1600s. And in the 18th century, they did this series of prints, and you don't find many of them, but they're beautiful things, and they're a pleasure to have.
And Fritz found lots.
The tapestry that you see here, this long, narrow panel, is actually an amalgam. It's an interesting thing that was done in the early part of the 20th century, where they would take fragments of very fine bits of tapestry, which had been cut off or rotted off, and these are sections, and they pieced them together. So you can see this is a beautiful figure here. It looks like it's autumn with the scythe to cut hay with, but it ends here, and this is another figure here, flanked by two caryatid figures, and yet it's interspersed very artfully here to all this floral aspect, which is a border piece from another tapestry. And way down at the bottom, we have even another wonderful piece. And this one is from the late 1500s, and it's these two figures in Elizabethan dress walking in a woodland landscape with a bit of a caryatid figure along the right-hand side here, and you can see at the top where it is artfully stitched together at the bottom of yet another piece with a figure which has nothing to do with it. His waist ends here, but it makes a wonderful object to have, and there is nothing like the tones of these early needleworks. The wonderful soft hues are just beautiful.
So I think we've seen a lot of the front hall. I think it's time for us to move into the living room, which is chock full of stuff. Come on.
And it's a beautiful room.
So here we are in the living room. Now, it's really full of stuff, and the reason it's full of stuff is because we are antique dealers. We have been collecting for, what, about 40 years, I think, together.
At least.
And separately before that, we've been in the antiques business since 1987 in various iterations and incarnations around the general vicinity here. We've had a number of different shops and we used to do shows and all kinds of things. So we're old hat at that. And the big thing about our house is that the decorating stems from the collecting. So the first thing that you notice is that we have tons of stuff on all the shelves. It's because we're passionate about various things. We have such a wide-ranging interest. And so there different collections of stuff in different places, and they've come from all over, and we've collected them over years and years of just passionate collecting, as well as we're in the business, so we have a lot of opportunity too.
And even though we do love things and we do fill our houses with all these wonderful things, I always want to keep in mind that every room has to be comfortable and lived in. Every chair has to be very comfortable. We especially love these wonderful down cushion upholstered pieces where you really can just be very comfortable and sit, although we don't actually sit that much. We're always very busy.
We joke about we're chair farmers. We collect chairs, but we never sit down.
We work very hard. We love what we do.
Yeah.
And the result is that we do end up spending a lot of time working, but it's what happens when you love what you're doing.
It's a pleasure.
But even though you collect all these things, you do need to keep your house being a wonderful place to live that you're comfortable in, where your friends can come in and not be afraid to sit down and lounge in a chair. That's important. You have to be able to enjoy your day.
Yeah, and there's a certain edit to what we do. I mean, as we get further into it, you'll get a sense of, it isn't just a random array. There's such a big movement right now for maximalism, and I kind of have a problem with that, because it's almost like having your house be full of stuff for the sake of having your house be full of stuff, which is different than what we do. What we do is that we actually curate our collections. And yes, it is densely decorated, but that is because we have been doing this for so long and we're so passionate. And so those kinds of movements, minimalism, maximalism, that's kind of a superficial way of looking at interior design. I think that for people who are visual, who love art, it goes way deeper than that.
Another thing that I think is interesting to point out, and that is that although we do love antiques and old things, we do have some modern art and modern things around.
Absolutely.
And you can mix them successfully, but you have to think about how you do it. For instance, if we might just take a look over here, amidst all our old master paintings, there's this wonderful, very abstract 20th century painting done by an old friend of mine, but the tones go with the room. The figure is a human size, it's a scale, it goes with other things. Contemporary painting of brilliant colors would not do well in this room. It would do well in perhaps our sunroom, which has more brilliant colors. But it's not merely using antique things. You also have to pay attention to bringing modern things in, or anything that you love. I love the painting, which is why it's here. But you have it in a place where it goes with the room. So maximalism is a way of adding all these things together that go in the scheme of the whole room, although they may be hundreds of years apart in their making and in a different style. And that's a very important thing in decorating a room, I find.
One of the things about colonial homes in their original state is that they were a series of small rooms. And the difference in this house is that at some point, probably in the 20th century, walls were removed, which caused this living room to be one room. It's very likely that it was 3 rooms, maybe only 2, but probably 3. And so when we were making the designs for the room and sort of the traffic flow and the seating areas, we really thought about it as 3 different spaces. So at this end, we have sort of a library feeling. We have our game table, which sometimes doubles as a kind of intimate dinner party scene. And we use this space all the time. When we have big family parties, there are people here playing cards or doing puzzles. And we can clear it out, we can add chairs, and it's actually my favorite place for a winter dinner with another couple, because it's very intimate and it's close to the fireplace and it's really cozy. So then we come to the middle section of the living room and we have our fireplace. And so we've created this kind of seating area around the fireplace. So this in some way really functions as the main heart of our living room. It's a wonderful cozy spot. We put hors d'oeuvres on the table and everybody kind of gathers around the fireplace. We've designed it this way because the room didn't work well using it in larger chunks. It made sense to divide the room into 3 unique spaces. And down in this end is actually what I like to think of as Fritz's office or library. That's Fritz's desk over there. And he's a book collector, among many other things. And so all of that is here. And this really functions as a completely separate space.
Works beautifully with a wonderful view of the yard outside, and it faces south so the sun pours in. So we do love these old master paintings, and we have collected many over the years. This one here is actually one from my family. This is something my parents bought when I was a child. And it's interesting because it's an 18th century copy of a great Reubens painting. Reubens did a series of, I think it's about 20 paintings of Marie de Medici, which are now in the Louvre. And this is one of hers where she is fleeing Marseille. And he was so revered in the 18th and 19th centuries, Reubens was, that many artists did copies of his paintings. This, of course, was in the years before photography. So this is a version of Marie de Medici Fleeing Marseille by Reubens, done about 100 years later than Reubens painted it. He painted it in the 1620s, and I've always loved it. And we did put an 18th century frame on it, which it did not have earlier, but it really places it quite nicely together.
As you might imagine, as antique dealers, we gift each other antiques all the time. So every birthday, Christmas, whatever holiday, anniversary, one of us has something really marvelous to give to the other. So on this particular year, I was shopping with our daughters at a big antique fair, and I came upon this Egyptian foot. It's from an Egyptian tomb. It's a really wonderful carved wood piece with gesso, just the kind of thing you would find at the Met. And I was very excited, and I bought it to give to Fritz for his birthday. And I packed it away, and everybody was very excited about this purchase. So then, on Christmas morning, it was my turn to open a present from Fritz. And I unwrapped the box, I pulled the tissue out, and the girls were sitting here with us, and what should I pull out of the box but a pair of Egyptian feet that Fritz had bought for me because he knew I like antiquities. The girls and I were absolutely bursting, trying not to laugh. Both of our daughters were just, winking at me and chuckling, and I was like, shh, shh, quiet, stop. Finally, we got ourselves under control. Now, Fritz's birthday is 2 days after Christmas, so you can imagine my delight, actually double delight, in having him open this one. Because how many people come up with Egyptian feet for each other's presents in the same year? So the story of Fritz and our meeting is kind of amusing. We weren't antique dealers at that time, although we did both love going to flea markets. But I was baking desserts in my apartment kitchen, and Fritz was the chef at a restaurant where I happened to be selling my desserts at the back door. And this particular Memorial Day weekend, I came in with all of my torts and pies, and the manager was paying me out the back door, and he said, "Do you want to meet the chef?" I said, sure. So we walked into the kitchen, and behind the hotline, looking a bit stressed out, was this adorable man with this huge head of curly hair and a huge beard and these little round glasses, and he was as skinny as a rail. And he looked at me, and the manager said, "Fritz, this is Dana Jennings." And he blew me a kiss. So that was the fateful moment.
I don't know what came over me. That's not something I don't think I've ever done.
It's a little out of character, I must say.
And it was not, it was kind of across the room, too.
It was. It was through the shelving units where they put the hot dishes up.
I was busy and working away. I mean, I think I had orders to cook, and Dana was over at the other end of the kitchen, and it just seemed the proper response. You
could say something like she was cute, but no, it's just the proper response.
She was, obviously. I had always loved antiques and art, and I was raised with nice things in the house, and I was always curious about them and always asked. And actually, I was a painter. I was an artist and was painting, and I was working in restaurants really to pay the bills, as making a living selling art is challenging. And at some point I realized I had sort of painted the paintings I felt I needed to paint and was ready to move on. And so went into the antiques business. But my career in the restaurant kitchens was, although I always have loved to eat well, it was really a way of supporting myself, and my heart was not in it.
Little different for my story. I grew up in the antiques business. My grandparents were dealers, my parents were dealers. So I sort of grew up in the shop. I grew up at the shows. And honestly, I was determined never to be an antique dealer in my 20s. But I loved to cook. So I ended up, going to culinary school and having a series of different jobs, mainly in pastry, but I did a lot of other things. And when we started dating, we spent all our time going to flea markets and going to antique fairs and, kind of buying bits and bobs. And then we decided to get a booth in an antique center, actually, together. We weren't married, but we just thought it would be fun. And that's we were dabbling and we were cooking on the side. And then I remember we bought this really massive colonial house in Goshen, Connecticut. And Fritz said to me, I just really want to be a full-time antique dealer. So for a little while, I was still cooking and he was building our business. It really sprung from there. It really did. Fritz was very passionate and we had a couple of different shops, first in our house, and then we moved our shop down to Woodbury, Connecticut, where we were for over 20 years, right?
Yeah, 20
long
years,
time.
good 20 years.
And during that time, I was really busy raising our two daughters, and I was sort of on the fringe involved in the business, and Fritz was absolutely full-time and built it into a wonderful, wonderful business. It was, full of all these kinds of early things that we love. It just was an amazing life. It was a lifestyle choice as much as a passion, and we were very lucky. We've always felt very lucky. So this is our sunroom, and it's actually my favorite room of the house. I just love the light in here at all times of day, and it's where we sit and have our tea in the morning, and later in the day we can sort of lounge out or take a nap on the couch. And also, it's a great place to have dinner parties because we have this enormous table, and it's a very open and sort of inviting space.
It's also a place to keep things, of course, knowing us. Right here we have a batch of things which are all basically classically inspired. There are some ancient things. This is an ancient Hellenistic period figurine, terracotta figurine, but wonderful drapery on it, but it is an ancient object. This is a 17th century marble carved statue. Diana with the crescent moon on her forehead is the emblem of Diana, the huntress. But it's wonderful. It's 17th or early 18th century. Probably Italian. And this is a plaster bust of Ariadne, but it's all classical themed here, various little bits and pieces. This is a bronze, an early 19th century Grand Tour bronze of Hercules. It's a very famous model, and this is a reduced copy of it. And this is another, I think this is a Diana as well, actually. Or maybe it's Aphrodite adjusting her sandal. Again, an early 19th century bronze. But they're evocative of the ancient Rome, which is wonderful.
So I wanted to introduce you to these portraits. These are our two daughters, Chloe and Phoebe. My grandmother, as I mentioned, was an antique dealer, but she also had an art gallery. And she was very keen on portraits. So as I was growing up, she had many commissions of portraits of our family. And one day we went to visit, the girls and I, and they were just of a certain age. And suddenly, Omi, my grandmother, said to me, "Oh my gosh, we have to have the girls painted now." And literally, she picked up the telephone and called a portrait artist that she knew in Woodstock, New York, because that's where she lived, and had the woman come over that very day. And the woman started taking some sort of scout photos of the girls out in the field and, kind of developed the concept and decided that it should be a little pre-Raphaelite feeling. And so over the next month or so, we went over several times for her to have the girls sit for these portraits. And they're actually two parts of a diptych. And my grandmother wanted to commission it this way so that for our lifetimes, we could have them together, but then going forward, the girls would each have their own portrait that were connected by the tree. It's just a lovely story, and they're beautiful portraits.
Another story, which I think is a wonderful serendipitous situation that happened in the making of the two portraits of our daughters, Chloe and Phoebe, is that they were posed in the attire that had been chosen for them, outdoors with the apple tree, for photographs from which the paintings would be done. But during the posing section, while the artist was taking photographs of them, what should happen but a deer wandered into the scene in the background to eat the apples. So both girls had to turn and look at the deer, creating this wonderful vignette photograph, which is a combination of both the poised and the candid, which I think is a wonderful mix of the two.
Earlier, Fritz was talking about how he was a painter when I first met him, and I thought it would be really interesting for you to see one of his works, which is right over here. So this is a painting that Fritz did in the not too distant past, but nevertheless he doesn't seem to paint anymore.
I paint occasionally, but not very often. I did this about 6 or 8 years ago, one winter when we had time, and I did some of these abstract Cubism-inspired paintings, and it fit really well in this room. Again, going back to what I said before earlier, using modern things is something we all should do. You fill your house with the things that have meaning for you. There are two other modern paintings here as well, and these are by a man named Richard Beauvais, who is no longer with us. He died, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, but we were brought in as antique dealers to look at the antiques in his house, and we ended up buying a batch of his art, and these two particular ones I loved, and we bought this one, which is actually a self-portrait, which goes with, it's titled here below, was obviously exhibited with a wonderful label from the 1950s, and its original frame, but it goes with my theme of all the other self-portraits in the front hall, although they are much earlier painters. It's a wonderful theme, an artist painting an image of themselves. The other one up here is a still life by Richard Beauvais, and it has a plaque about how it won a prize. I guess it's on the reverse. I think it was at the National Academy. He's a wonderful painter, and he never had a gallery. An excellent painter, did beautiful paintings, but never had a gallery and didn't sell his works. He was a teacher, an art teacher at Pratt in New York City for his career.
So we have this amazing Italian lion. One year we took the girls and we went to Italy for a wonderful vacation, and we were in Florence. And because of our interest in faience and Italian pottery, we also went to a lot of the shops where they're making copies of early things. And we just kind of went crazy and fell in love with this guy. It was crazy because we had to ship it home. But we ended up buying a lot of things there, and we sold almost all of it, but we just could not part with him. And whenever I go by, I have to pet him, and sometimes I even tempt fate so he doesn't bite me. So the sunroom sort of seamlessly flows into this back hallway, and it's actually another opportunity for some of our collecting. You can see here on the wall all these portraits of all of us, and it's sort of our little rogues gallery, if you will. These are portraits of our daughters and Fritz and I when we first were married, and then there are some of my grandparents and one of me as a child, all of which were commissioned by various people for us, including a portrait of our old dog, Pippa, which Fritz commissioned for my birthday. And the artist was so taken by our dog that she painted 2 of them. So we have one at each of our houses.
Again, this room has been a wonderful place for showcasing items. This piece of furniture is something from my family, and this is something actually from my grandparents had this. When they were first married on their honeymoon, they went to Italy in about 1921, I think it was, right after World War I. And they bought a whole of this Italian furniture, which I grew up with some of it, including this piece. And actually there's a wonderful photograph in here somewhere of my grandmother with my mother in her arms with this piece of furniture in the side. And the photograph is clearly, I think it's from 1922. My mother was about a year old. But in any case, above it, we have this wonderful carved statue of an angel. And I think it's probably early 17th, possibly late 16th century, carved wooden. Sadly, somebody had it outside for a while, so the paint has disintegrated a great deal. But it has wonderful movement, and I'm sure it is the angel Gabriel, one half of an Annunciation scene. So the Virgin Mary would have been over here with the angel Gabriel announcing to the Virgin Mary that she was going to have the baby Jesus. Story we all know. This is a good collection of American stoneware, all of them with the ovoid shapes, which I love. And I have a collection of these. I've been collecting them for years and years and years. They have such beautiful shapes, all hand-thrown, all different, all handmade, American 1800 to 1840 period. So that's another group of things which we have been buying over the years. They're funny things. They're actually shepherd's crooks, but they are, I don't believe, actually meant to be used. Shepherds would use these things historically to pull a sheep into its flock when the sheep was somewhere that it would not harm the sheep, but yet corral it to the direction that the shepherd wanted it to go. I think this one is a theater prop. It's beautifully made, but it does not seem as though it was really made to be used. And the other one I'm not sure about. It is the same kind of motif, but we don't actually know. These both came from my wife's grandmother, I believe.
Yeah, so my grandmother also loved to put together collections of things. So she had these in her house together with a collection of walking sticks that were always hung on the wall, and they're just a graphically beautiful thing. These walking sticks are very typical kind of American, carved for hikers. You know, nowadays we have the sort of modified ski pole, but people used to actually, you know, climb up the mountain, you know, kind of with one of these, but they're just so beautifully made. They're so beautifully, you know, kind of turned, and they have a beautiful patina, so they become kind of an art object, really.
And it's interesting to note that some of them, not all of them, have the emblem of the hotel that they were used at, because these were something where you would stay at the hotel and you would borrow these to walk up the mountain, and they would have the emblem. I think this one is Haynes Falls, it says on it.
Yeah. Anyway, all from my grandmother's house.
One thing about the floors in these rooms, which I think is interesting to point out, is that because this section of the house was actually a 1980s addition, the floors were that what I think are a fairly boring, narrow oak board floor, which is very common and very sturdy, and a good flooring material, as oak wears very well, but it's a bit of a boring wood. So with the lightness in these rooms, I really wanted to do something a little bit more dramatic and interesting. So I devised painting check floors and demarcating demarcating the rooms with two different schemes. So in the smaller room, I did smaller squares, and this is kind of our back entry, so I didn't want it too formal. So I did the squares on a regular basis, conforming to the room, without a border and without any sort of complication of a diagonal. But as you go into the larger room, I wanted to demarcate it and have it be representative and fit well with the room. So I made the squares a larger size, which goes better with the room, gives a little bit more drama because it matches the scale of the room, and then put them on the diagonal, which just makes it more interesting and a little bit more formal and highly worked. And then did a border around the edge, which also gives it a little bit more formality. And yet using the same color scheme in both rooms, which binds them together visually without there being too much contrast. And speaking about floors, the contrast is very interesting because you go from these rooms, which are very light and airy, into the kitchen, with its 18th century floor, with the wonderful early boards here. These are oak here, there's a lot of patching over here, which we had done, which we used old lumber for. But these are the original ones here, with these wide oak boards, where you can see how the nails, with the iron over the years, has created these stains, because the iron oxidizes and blackens the wood around it.
Welcome to the kitchen. This is the breezy knoll, I call it. This is where I spend a huge amount of my life with great pleasure cooking. This is another room that was created out of what were probably 2 or 3 rooms in the original colonial house. The walls were already gone again when we bought the house, and so we kind of embraced the idea that we had to make it into separate spaces. So the business end of the kitchen is down here, and we love a C shape. Because when you're a cook that enjoys the process of cooking, you really like that sort of pivot and go, and the workspace works really well that way. It's also really nice because when we have company or family here, everybody can be down at that end, they're not underfoot, and yet I can talk to everybody because everybody loves to be in the kitchen. And so this kind of an arrangement really functions very well. In making the plan for how this room would work, originally this was a solid wall, and the walls were actually barn board, so the whole room was so dark and dingy. And Fritz had the brilliant idea of getting an old window and actually putting it in this wall to just let in this incredible western light. And it changed the entire room. I mean, it just opened it up. Now we have sunshine pouring in, especially in the late afternoon when the sun sets right through the far windows. So it just completely transformed the kitchen. So another one of the things that I love in the kitchen is our collection of Delftware. You can see all of these big, what we call chargers, because they're larger sized rather than plates. And then we have an exceptional collection of Delft tiles. So there are some Delft and some other tiles here, but if you pan around the sink, most of these are 18th century Delft tiles from Holland. We have an enormous collection of Delftware and faience scattered throughout the house. But when we were young collectors and we didn't have a lot of money, we were passionate about Delft, but we couldn't afford the big, beautiful pieces, but we could afford the tiles. So as a result, we have, I don't know, what would you say?
Oh, there are a couple hundred.
Couple hundred tiles. We picked sort of some of the best to display, and the rest are in a box in the attic. That's kind of our MO. But anyway, we do enjoy them, and they just lend such richness. Each one is a little vignette, a little story. Sometimes they're religious stories, sometimes they're secular, sometimes they're, you know, a shepherdess with her boobs hanging out. I mean, it's just sort of amazing, the variety of storylines that you find.
One of the things that I really had an idea of when we did the renovations here on the house was to really tie the spaces together and really make the spaces work very well, because none of this had been thought through in the prior renovations of this house. So I picked this big wide cornice molding to run down the whole section of this room and run around. We put the hood in here, but to run around the hood, run around the corner posts, which you see there, and around the corner boards, to tie everything together. So you go from the working part of the kitchen into the dining section, also the section where Dana has her desk, and it ties things together. And then unifying it also with the one color, I think works very well, and having it be one room and yet 2 different spaces that still work together, but do not isolate each one too much. Moving on from that into the corner cupboards, which were here, although we changed them minorly in order to have them run all the way up to the ceiling, because they only went as high as the windows. My sense was to make the ceiling go up, make the cupboards go up all the way. It brings your eye upward. And then we, of course, filled it with stuff, which is our modus operandi. we have collected all this wonderful stuff over the years from various locations. This is some of our early European faience. There is one Chinese porcelain vase in the top, which actually is from Dana's family. And then this very charming collection of face pictures here from various places, one French, one Persian, one, and both of these are English actually, early creamware, but the faces are really kind of wonderful caricatures and silly in some sense, but evocative as a collection. Beautiful still life painting there of peaches on a wonderful early Chinese plate, and more of our good collection of Delft. A lot of it is broken or repaired, which never bothers me. It's just as old and has been loved and cared for that has been repaired, and I never think of that as being something that is detrimental. We have modern painting in here. I bought a batch, I think it was about 6 or 7 paintings by this one artist whose name escapes me now, and they were all really good. We sold all of them but decided to keep this one because the green and the red just went so well in this room. Another example of how you just bring modern things in, the things that you love and want to live with, into your decorating. They can all work if you put the time in and the thought to make them work. Everybody is so different. It's so difficult to know. I think if someone said it's so eminently livable, I would find that a very high compliment. I find it eminently livable. It's a place that I'm excited to live in, excited to be in, and when we are away, for instance, if traveling, as we do travel quite a lot with our business, and we spend summers, we have a summer cottage we spend summers at, when you're away and you return and you find yourself so happy to be here and your eyes delighted to wander from one beautiful thing to another, you find it eminently livable, as everyone's home space should be. So if someone were to say, oh, I find your house to be so wonderful to live in, I would say that would be the greatest compliment.
So this is my desk. It's a wonderful object. It's an early desk with later kind of blue marbleized paint, and it just makes me smile, as does the collection of things that I have on top of it. One of the things that's quite amusing, when I was a little girl and all through my growing up, my mother would say if I was going somewhere, walk on eggs. Walk as though you're walking on eggs. And that kind of evolved into, bye darling, eggs! And as a result, eggs have huge significance in our family, and it's kind of carried on. My mother had one of these wonderful Italian egg stacks. They're really kind of wonderfully decorative. And so I inherited this from her, and it was sort of the beginning of the egg collection fetish all through our lives. Whenever we came up with something that was egg related, it would be a gift. And so we've managed to amass all of these. But I also have a little bit of a fetish with animals and birds. So I have added in all those things. And I really love the contrast of all these early things with modern art again. This is a painting that was actually done by my father, who was an artist and art teacher and an archaeologist. And I love bringing all those colors together. I love the juxtaposition between that and the early still life paintings. That is the thing. It's all about the mix. It's about balance. It's about color. It's about how your eye responds and what really draws joy for you. I mean, for me, looking at all of these things and even looking at them together, it just fills my eye, and it gives me such pleasure. It really makes me happy.
One thing that I've always loved, and Dana as well, are still life paintings. And of course, in a kitchen, they go so well because they almost always have food-related themes. These are several that we've come up with over the years. I was so pleased as Punch to find this pair of these. I think they're Spanish still lifes on one occasion, and we quickly acquired them. I gave them to Dana as a present. But this one with the fish, the radishes, the cabbage, all these things with a basket and the eggs and these roses. It's just a wonderful thing, and they have their original frames. This is another one that came locally. This came from an old friend antique dealer. It was without a frame. We put the frame on it. But the fried eggs, we've always both
All
thought
about the eggs.
so silly and charming, and with a little bird on it, which is the European goldfinch. It's probably an Italian painting, and actually it must be, because it's got the Chianti bottle with the telltale wicker straw work around the wine bottle there. And this is another one with the fish, which is a mate to this one over here, the Spanish still lifes, with these wonderful, you have cutlery, pieces of fruit, and again the roses, and this really interesting basket here, beautifully done, and a copper pan. They're just charming things, but they go so well in a kitchen, a still life. It's so appropriate to what goes on in a kitchen. So it's a pleasure to have them in this room.
So now we're going to head upstairs. Come on up. So here we are in the primary bedroom, Fritz and my bedroom, which is ensuite with this lovely bathroom. I just have to say something about the color of the trim and the main color in the bathroom, because I love this color so much. It's actually, boringly enough, called light blue, but it has the capacity to change with the light. It's almost like water sometimes, and especially in the bathroom when the sun pours in. I've never had a color that moved me quite so much as this shade of blue. I don't know why. It's just very magical to me.
And it is a Faro and Ball paint.
Yeah, again, this was part of our experiment to use a different brand of paint. I'm not trying to plug them, but nevertheless, it's interesting for people who are interested in their homes. Anyway, here we are, again, just crammed full of everything that we love. I have a kind of particular interest in needleworks, and the tapestry, of course, falls into that category, but also things like these little pieces of crewel work, which are so beautifully done. And what's astonishing about them is, with their age, the color is still so brilliant. And then I have another little needlework over here, and then we have these wonderful portraits. I particularly love this one, and I've never wanted to sell it because it actually looks so much like Fritz did when I first met him. So I always think of it, and he's an artist. He's holding a pencil and he's looking out at the viewer. It's almost as though it may have been a self-portrait. In any case, to me, it's Fritz as a young man. So this 4-poster bed is something that we've been dragging around for years, and it's had a lot of different iterations in different houses because we are serial house buyers. We always think of houses as just big antiques, and so collect them all. So we've had lots of houses, and over the years, mainly this has been our bed. And sometimes we have it, you know, draped with amazing tulle, and it looks very dreamy in the summertime. And then in the dark of winter, sometimes we have navy velvet drapes hanging off of it. But being that it's the shoulder season, it's a little naked. But we do have the counterpane at the top, which is literally nothing more than a big chunk of really, really beautiful new fabric that had such a bold pattern. I love the use of pattern on pattern. I love mixing those things, and yet the thing that unifies it is that it's all blue and white in this case. It's sort of a conceit in a way to do all blue and white, but at the same time, you know, it's classic for a reason. So I love the mix of all these things, and it just makes a beautiful bed, but it also creates a kind of acoustic in the room because the fabrics, they kind of absorb sound, and so you walk from the hallway into the bedroom and the sound almost envelops you, or the lack of sound, and it has a softness which makes the bedroom kind of a refuge.
And the bed itself is something that actually we had altered because we love the Barley twist, which is a real 17th century form, and you don't find these very often. And when we bought this bed, it was actually a single bed and yellow. And so I had our restorer alter it, and it did not have the posts up here, it had finials up here. So we had our restorer make the rails, enlarge the width of the bed, but keeping basically the posts, which was the important part. And then with the superstructure here, from which we suspended these wonderful blue velvet drapes with this wonderful gilt trim, which we have, although we haven't used it lately. And then we got these finials. These are actually wonderful 19th century English tiebacks, which I had him cut down and use as finials for the bed. So they actually have the wonderful early gilt finish that you get from this kind of a thing on what is basically a made-up bed. But the effect is wonderful, and it's about the effect. And so that's how that came up. And we have other things in this room of great note, one of which is a lovely little painting of the Madonna and Child here. French or Belgian, Netherlandish, the Low Countries up there, but a just charming painting of the Madonna and Child in early 1600s with a little view out the window there, but a beautiful painting in a period frame as well. And a very large Chinese porcelain painted vase. This size is very hard to find. It's a pleasure to find. And it's very traditional to put them in your fireplaces in the winter, because your fireplaces, of course, in the summer, are pretty dull places in the summer when you don't have a fire going. This is a really wonderful, interesting chest. Latin American, beautifully decorated drawer fronts, and it would originally have been high up on a base with a fall front. And that front has long gone, and they made another base for it at some point. But the beautifully decorated drawer fronts are what remain, as well as its wonderful ironwork. You can see here the little rings that would have had been the attachments for the hooks that would have held the fall front. So it would have been a desk that came down upon which you could write and pull your writing implements out from the drawers.
More importantly, though, Fritz actually bought this at auction, and as so often happens when he comes home with something fabulous, I immediately absconded with it and said, nope, that's not going in the shop, that's coming to our house, that's going to be my chest of drawers. I operate mostly from the gut, and he obviously is the academic around here, but I just fell completely in love with it. It's such a special piece.
I knew she would. I knew when I saw it where it was going.
Destiny. Fritz and I mostly agree about things. Our taste is very closely aligned. I think we're very lucky because not only do we live together for these many years, but we work together daily. But there definitely are times when we don't see eye to eye. I think my taste may run a little bit more rustic and a little bit more eclectic than his does. He tends to have a more scholarly approach and love things not only because they're beautiful, but because of what they are specifically, what's the history, what's this, what's that. So sometimes his academic interest is more powerful than my gut reaction. And sometimes he'll say, oh, this is an amazing XYZ, and it's from here and it's from there. And I just turn and I look at him and I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to live with that. We don't always agree, but by and large we do. It's kind of a miracle. It really is. We love a lot of the same things, and we love a density of decoration, which it could be said that not everybody likes, though at their peril. Anyway, we really enjoy kind of the amassing of a collection, as we talked about before. And we each have sort of specialty things that draw us. Fritz has, old master paintings and drawings are something that he's always loved and been very passionate about. And I love certain ones in a less specific way. I love them because of a facial expression, or like this Madonna and Child behind us here. I love this one because, it's just so soft, and it is so evocative of maternity and of babies. And, I'm not going to stand here and tell you exactly what it is and why I love it. I love it just because it's a beautiful piece of art. And Fritz loves it because it's beautiful, but he also loves things because of what they are and what they tell us about the past. So we collect for different reasons, and we get enthusiastic about different things, but we somehow always manage to meet in the middle. We're very lucky.
Generally is a situation where we both may really admire and be happy to buy something, but whether it ends up in the house is another matter. And a lot of it is there a place for it? Is there a room in which it will go?
Is there a square inch of wall left? Or do we have to trade up or down?
And that can always be a consideration, because if you don't have room for it, if you don't have a spot for it, as much as you love it, it's not always easy to keep it.
And that's the pragmatic side of him that I sometimes have to argue with, because when I fall in love with something, I'll be damned if I'm going to sell it.
A couple things here, just going around the room, because we love these things. There's this wonderful part of a tapestry. It would have been a much larger tapestry, and I don't know what the subject would have been, but there's this dog, this large dog with all this character being embraced by this child, and the look of the two of them, I just think it's absolutely splendid. And again, it has the wonderful tones of early needlework, which you don't get in anything else. The richness, the depth of the tones. Here we have a painting of a woman holding a book. She has a trumpet in her hand, and the book is open, and a scarf on her head with stars. And it's a personification of fame, which is something that they did in the Renaissance and in the 17th century. They would take the attributes of a certain theme, an idea, and make an image that would be a human figure that exemplifies these. So this would be a figure of fame, and she has the trumpet because the trumpet announces the coming of a splendid personage, a famous person. The book, because a famous person is written about. History is written about a person, so she has the book. And the stars in her hair, because a famous person is in the heavens and has a celestial part of their character. An Italian in the 1600s, this painting is. Some of the many things that we have and love.
So we're going to take you down and give you a little tour of this wonderful potting shed that Fritz designed this past summer. Unfortunately, of course, it's the fall now, and the beautiful flower beds that led up to it are kind of crispy. But nevertheless, it's worth a peek. Fritz?
Come have a look. It's just a little building, but it's just what I thought should be here in the garden. It's a place to keep the garden tools, a place to keep your seeds, and yet it also is a place where you can sit, you can read a book, you can do whatever you want. You could write a book in this little space. There are two entrances. We used old doors and old windows. So you have two entrances. You can come in either way, either in the walled garden or out to the yard. And there are wonderful views out to the side here. So to sit in here and enjoy the view is just a splendid thing. You ask what home means to me. Well, that's a hard question, but I have to say home is where you're comfortable, where you live, where you want to be, where you cook your meals, where you invite friends over and enjoy an evening together, where you wake up in the morning and have your morning tea, or step outside and have your morning tea if the weather is fine. Home is where you're comfortable, where you want to be. That's what it means to me.
And for me, home is a place that I draw strength and inspiration. It's the place that I come back to after I've spent all of the fuel I have, and I have the opportunity to look around me and to remember all the things that we've done together and all the things we've collected and all the memories that have passed through the home. And those things are what refuel me. All of the beauty, all of the sort of history that goes into wherever you live. So that, to me, is what home is. Home is where you've built your life, and it's the place that you recharge and get yourself going again.
It's been wonderful to have you. We have a long day ahead.
Lots of antiques to buy.
We have busy lives.
Yes.
I'm sure you do as well. And it's been a pleasure to have you here, Homeworthy.
Thanks for coming. See you again.
Today on Homeworthy, we're visiting the home and gardens of Jennifer Sangodi. After moving from New York City to Old Lyme, Connecticut, she and her husband went all in on perfecting their green thumbs, building out a vegetable garden, greenhouse, potting room, formal rose garden, and more to ensure they made the most of their expansive grounds. She tours us through each space, giving us a lesson on potting and alfresco tablescapes along the way. Enjoy! You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. By clicking the join button below, you not only support the production of these videos, you also gain access to exclusive content just for members. And today, our members will get an exclusive look inside her patio gardens and front gardens, which are flourishing with wild plants and flowers like Japanese maples, lavender, and hydrangeas.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Jennifer Sangodi, and welcome to my house in Old Lyme. Come on in. So when we first moved into the house, we really, fell in love with the idea of these doors being black lacquered. I love black lacquer. I love fine paints of Europe. And we were working with our contractor, who we still work with on a ton of projects around the house. He was equally as inspired and learned how to literally use fine paints of Europe, learned how to do it. He converted his entire workshop in order to make these black lacquer doors perfect. It took him maybe longer than it should have, but they came out so brilliantly, and we have 2 sets of these doors here and 2 sets in the dining room, and we just love them. They add that kind of really touch of drama and elegance into, these rooms, where we decided to have the wall color in here be a little bit more muted in the marble white, but I love how they really kind of set this space off. It was literally one of the very first projects that we did when we moved in, and it came out brilliantly. So the other kind of inspiration for this nook too, these 2 black lacquer Ming chairs, we also purchased kind of the week we moved into the house. So these 2 chairs, the doors kind of really started, building this space out. I wanted it to be kind of a little moment where you could come and maybe sit by the windows, read a book, and kind of relax in this setting instead of, it's a little bit of an unusual setting, but I wanted to really utilize the doors and the windows so that you could sit by them as well. This piece here, we just got this piece, and I always wanted kind of a low table here because I purchased the mirror first, and the mirror also being an antique, with these kind of big, beautiful flares on the side dictated obviously how high, you could have a table. So the mirror went up first, and then the hunt was on for the table. And this, I just purchased a store in Old Lyme called Treasures, which is one of my absolute favorite stores. The owners are, Jenny and Brett, are incredible curators. They have exquisite taste and quite the eye. So every time I go in there, I always find something amazing. So this beautiful table was from Treasures. I really just wanted this to be a gorgeous kind of sitting nook where you could come, you could read a book, you could look out the window, open the doors, and kind of really take in the room from a different perspective. So this is our great room, and I really wanted to curate this space with a lot of seating. We love entertaining, we love having people over, and I really wanted to kind of define this space in multiple different seating areas. And in addition to that, really make sure that it still felt cozy and intimate, even though it's a really big room. When we first moved in, obviously there was nothing in this room. It was my puppy's playroom for many, many months before we started getting some furniture here and there and kind of curating and finding the really special pieces that we wanted to fill this room with. The bamboo coffee table was one of the first pieces I found for the room. It was actually right down the street in a interior designer, their showroom called Three Trees. She all of a sudden became an amazing resource for me, having just moved in and coming into the area. So finding something so beautiful that was kind of just exactly what I wanted for the house really kind of started to speak to me. And then kind of off of the architecture of this table, then started to really understand, okay, I wanted 2 couches here, 2 chairs here, space by the fireplace, the space by the windows, so we could really fill this room and kind of explore it and sit in different areas. And then the other kind of pieces that I really wanted to start filling the room with when we moved in, this was just one big giant blank wall. It was kind of always, okay, how do you fill a big giant wall? Well, a beautiful screen was always the answer. So this screen was something that we found at an auction from someone's home. My husband and I love going on all the different auction websites. We love kind of sourcing. Each piece comes from either like a different auction or a different auction house's showroom. So we love kind of digging through the auctions almost every week, every day, looking for kind of new, beautiful things that pop up. We've pretty much decorated our entire house with auction websites or antique, vintage shopping. I will literally drive anywhere for a vintage piece, whether it's 2 hours, 3 hours, north, south, east. I will go anywhere for a vintage piece, and that kind of theme runs continuously throughout the entire house. The rug especially is quite a mission finding a rug this size, for this scale of the room, also in the color palette and the tone. And lo and behold, one morning we woke up and there it was on an auction site. And we love kind of playing with these different kind of warm reds, brasses, golds, the colors, the textures, and different fabrics. These couches are 2 of my favorite pieces. Kind of right after I got the table and the rug kind of situated, I happened to be at Black Rock Galleries, which is a big resource for me. It's right down the highway, about 45 minutes from here in Bridgeport, and I just get lost whenever I go there. It's this big multi-warehouse showroom. It's incredible. And you never know what you're gonna find. They prop out movie sets, they prop out TV sets, they prop out, they work with individuals, and these couches were there, and they were actually, I was told, made for a woman in Manhattan. How they ended up at Black Rock, I don't know. They really spoke to me in this seating arrangement, which I was really trying to create with this kind of face-to-face interactive seating arrangement. Same thing with these tables. These are antique. I'm not sure exactly where they came from. They're from an antique dealer out in Branford, Connecticut. I love this color marble, kind of old Italian, almost Saint Laurent style marble is like one of my favorite color tones. And really, what was fun to kind of work with was playing off of the brass of the table, these kind of beautiful reds and creams in the rug, mixed with the marble and the screen, which really started to bring this kind of color palette together in this room. And then over here, this is one of my other favorite pieces. Again, this room was quite large, so there was always the idea that, we wanted this piano. It's a little out of tune. I used to play the piano a long time ago, but it's a very interesting kind of shell leg detail here that I love. This piano is from the 1930s, which coincidentally is the same time period that the original part of the house was built. So I loved the kind of synergy there with the same time period. And again, it's just this beautiful kind of brown marbly wood that looks so beautiful. And then, over here to these chairs were really fun that we found. I was going to put these in the greenhouse actually originally, these kind of very open wire chairs. I was going to put them outside in the greenhouse to kind of sit, which we'll go to in a minute, to kind of sit in the greenhouse, but I kind of loved how open they were in here. It kind of brings a nice contrast to kind of some of this furniture that feels a little bit heavier, to then have these like open work chairs right by the windows. Felt really nice. And then again about this room too, you know, the light in this room is something that really spoke to me in the very beginning. You know, coming in here, this whole room was kind of that antique New England yellow, and I really, you know, was inspired by the light that these doors and the windows brought in. So really wanted to refresh it, give it a new coat of paint. It's the first thing we did when we moved into the house, was paint everything and kind of make it a blank slate in a way. I'm a painter, so making things a blank slate and kind of starting from scratch is always where I love to start. This piece over here, I've always been kind of obsessed with these kind of chinoiserie case pieces. If you can't tell, chinoiserie is a running theme throughout my home. And this case piece is gorgeous. It is a desk that fully comes down, and I guess I was writing someone a love note because there's a feather pen. This was a gift from someone that I just love. So whenever, you know, communication strikes me to write to someone. So I love this case piece. This was from Cherish. I love Cherish. It's one of my absolute favorite places to kind of get inspired and look at things. And then the inside of this, the shelf is missing right now, but this is all just some beautiful interior space, which is great. We love this. And I love this painting is actually, it's a little raised, which I think is really pretty and dimensional. It's funny, the moving guy, when he brought it, he lost the finial and it was taped to the side of his truck. So he drove back to bring me the finial of the piece. He was very nice about it. So I'm glad that that came in one piece. So this alley of trees, this was all here when we moved in, and we've spent a few years kind of constantly pruning them to make them look better and better every year. And what's really beautiful about them is that right now they have this kind of glossy greenish red leaf tone to them, but what's really beautiful is that in the first kind of week in April, they bloom fuchsia, bright pink. It's one of the most beautiful sights. And because they line up with the windows, this is the great room that we just walked out of, they line up with the windows on either side of the fireplace. You literally see, every time you turn the corner in the house, you see pink just filling the windows. It's really beautiful. So we love that. And they have little, we haven't really deciphered, we think they're a very special variety of hawthorn crabapple trees. We're not really sure what variety, but we've tried to decipher it actually for quite some time because they do bear fruit. You can't eat them, but they do bear fruit. So we're gonna go this direction first to the vegetable garden, which we built last year. Was one of our big projects last year. We'll take you later, but our rose garden, which is now a rose garden, in the back was the original vegetable garden. When we moved in, it was a bed of weeds, and then we returned it into a vegetable garden, and we decided it wasn't enough space. So we built the big vegetable garden, and the greenhouse and the potting room was kind of all the projects that we completed, I'd say, over the past 2 years or so. So we're gonna go out to the vegetable garden first, and we're gonna get some food. We spend a lot of time in here. Obviously, a garden of this size, we are always doing maintenance, bug checking, making sure nothing's getting eaten. We do everything organically, so no sprays, nothing. Not only do we have vegetables and fruit and herbs, we also have a lot of just kind of ornamental flowers because we wanted to make sure that, you know, we could grow things for, you know, cut flowers and things like that as well that we could utilize around the house. So we have 2 different types of big climbing David Austin roses. coneflowers, these big giant Casablanca lilies behind me. And we really wanted it to be an area where we could come and sit and hang out in the garden, have a glass of wine, etc., and see what's for dinner. Over here, I really love the layout that we kind of made for this garden, because we can have, and we can change it up every year as well, which is really important, for maintenance of different types of vegetables. You can't plant, let's say, eggplant in the same bed that you did last year because of pests and things like that. So the layout kind of enables us to really move annual vegetables around, which is great. And we wanted to create these kind of almost formal, informal borders with the beds in the center, kind of in the ground. We decided to do in-ground beds because we thought it would be a bit more, connected to the earth instead of building up the garden bed. So we love it in the ground like this, which is great. And so let's go over here. We've got some really good varieties of yellow squash, zucchini squash. This is a really fun squash over here. It's called Zephyr, and it's yellow. There's a few little ones on here, and it's yellow and green, which is really beautiful. And as they get bigger, they change color, which is amazing. And we love to kind of just interplant herbs and different things together that, kind of work together. So we've got basil and rosemary in here. My husband and I cook a lot. And so we come out here, especially at peak season when, in August when the tomatoes are really peak season, the eggplant are peak season. So we love coming out here and kind of seeing, what's growing and what's for dinner, essentially. And as you can see, we have a ton of dragonflies out here. We have a ton of honeybees, bumblebees, butterflies. We actually just saw, we plant this beautiful fennel and dill every year because the butterflies just love it. So they start off as caterpillars. Let me see if I can find one for you. They start off as caterpillars and they just come and they feast. So a little bit about this too is about the ecosystem and the bees and the bugs that, make this whole thing work. These guys are spiky too, so you can't always reach in here and grab these because these leaves are spiky. Let's grab this guy, this big yellow squash. Love. These artichokes are a little overripe. We overwintered about 4 different artichoke plants. You can see we've eaten a few of them already. These artichokes are beautiful. They're a little over, so we're gonna let these go because these are gonna bloom and they're gonna be really beautiful when they bloom. We were so happy when those came back from the winter because artichokes don't overwinter very well, but somehow magically we were able to mulch them enough to where they came back this season, which is great. Let's actually go over here and get this one. This looks perfect. It's beautiful. So that's gonna go into the pizza oven later. We're gonna roast that. It's always like foraging, right? Like we come out here and we're always really excited to see what's blooming and kind of what's in season. So it's a little bit, about timing and waiting and seeing kind of like what's happening in the garden, which is always really exciting. Let's see if we can find anything else over here that's ready to go. We love having a ton of herbs around. We just planted this out a few months ago with the basil, mint, thyme. This is creeping lavender, which always smells rosemary. That always smells so good. But we love having these big kind of like herbs available for us. And the more you cut, the more it grows. For a garden this size, we had the space available to us, so we wanted to build something, of this magnitude. However, you don't need this much space to do vegetables. I mean, a simple raised bed, 2 simple raised beds, even, a lot of vegetables do really well in pots, as long as you have, the right amount of sun, right amount of water, and good drainage. I mean, I think you can do vegetables really anywhere. So let's go over here. There's some eggplants that are growing over here that are looking really good. I love these little eggplants. Look at all the flowers on this. These are the little fairy tale eggplant that are just so delicious and so good. I love growing fairy tale eggplant. And then these kind of bigger Italian eggplants start coming later in the season, which is always great. Over here we have a lot of acorn squash. This is all acorn squash and pumpkins that we've started growing over here. Something my husband and we've been doing now for about, I want to say 3 years. We've been growing all of our own garlic. So every year, after the first year's batch, we always save, a few heads of garlic, because 1 clove will turn into a head of garlic, which is amazing. So this is our little garlic patch. And you see the leaves are the scapes have already grown. We made scape pesto. We made eggs with scapes. We love all the garlic scapes. They're delicious. And once these kind of lower leaves start to brown and kind of shrivel up, you know that it's ready. So these are almost ready, which is really exciting. And we grow different varieties of garlic, which we love. And we have garlic all year. You never have to buy it. These aren't ripe yet, but there's some amazing big acorn squashes starting to grow in there, which is amazing. Over here, we planted these blackberries, I'd say about 2 years ago, and they've just exploded in the past 2 years. We've got next year's canes already shooting up higher than the fence over there, which is so exciting. And if you really get in here and look, you can see how much fruit is really on all of these stalks, which is really amazing. I mean, when this was in flower about a month ago, this was spectacular. These were all gorgeous, big white flowers. And if you come kind of in here, which is beautiful, there are some that are really already ripening, a lot of different stages of ripeness. But as kind of the weeks roll along, these will all start to ripen. But what's so fun is that we come out here kind of every morning and we get to pick blackberries right off the vine and eat them. And then over here we have the raspberries. Again, we planted these about 2 years ago and they just took off. So these are all, again, in kind of different stage of ripeness, but some of these are ready to go, some aren't. So maybe I'd say about another week we can come and really pick all these off. There are some back here that are really starting. These are actually also black raspberries, which are very interesting and they're very sweet, which is fantastic. Over here we've got some eggplant. I love eggplant. Eggplant in all ways. Eggplant roasted, fried, I mean, you name it. Eggplant pasta is one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. Pasta alla norma. So we grow a lot of eggplant. So we'll have these for dinner. And then good story about these kind of fantastic snowball alliums that are everywhere. We had these in the ground, these kind of just spring onions in the ground. Last year, we left them in the ground. They overwintered, and around June, they started to put off flowers and they started to bloom. So sometimes in the garden too, we'll just leave things, we'll see what they do, we'll see if they come back the next year, and it's always a surprise. So there's a lot of spontaneity in the garden too, which always really excites us, because we get something new every year, and it's alive, it's not always the same. And the bees, and they just love these allium flowers. And then here, which is a real treat, these are out of bloom already, but these are pine berries. So classically, of course, there's the red strawberry, but we decided to plant pine berries. They're a little bit pineapple strawberry flavored, and they're white. They're really beautiful, and these flowered and grew tons and tons and tons of pine berries that we were eating for weeks and throwing into smoothies, and we couldn't get enough of them. And this is something really special that not everyone has in their garden. So I would highly suggest planting pine berries because they are delicious. If we go over here, you'll see we have some different varieties of blueberry bushes. Something happened with this guy, we're not really sure what. But we have kind of all these different gorgeous varieties of blueberries that we love. These aren't ripe just yet. One day these will be, the idea here with the blueberry bushes was to create kind of a hedge of blueberries. So one day we'll have a full blueberry hedge that we can pick from, which is very exciting. I love all this flowering. Time is so beautiful. And sometimes, you know, even if we don't eat it, like the thyme, you know, we didn't pick it fast enough, we weren't eating it, so it went to flower. That's okay, because it's still part of the, you know, greater ecosystem of the garden, and kind of seeing how things flower and bloom and grow, and we just kind of love that experimentation of it as well. Let's go over to the greenhouse, which I'm really excited to show you guys. That's really where the magic of the garden begins, is in the greenhouse, because most of our plants we grow from seed. Now we're under the shade of this tree. It is very hot today to be out in the garden, but this is a sugar maple, and my husband and I have actually been able to successfully tap this tree and our other sugar maple on the other side of the property, and we have made gallons and gallons of incredible maple syrup. It's a intense process that requires a lot of boiling, but it has been such a fun project. That was like one of the first things we did the first winter, is we discovered that this was a sugar maple. So of course my husband is like, okay, we need to make maple syrup. And we did, and it was delicious. So I'm going to take you guys into the greenhouse, which is right here. When we first purchased the property and we moved in, none of this was here. The real vision for this entire space that I'll walk you through was to have access to the potting room so that we could do all of our seeds and, you know, plant up pots and kind of have access to all of our tools. Then to walk out here into the greenhouse to transfer plants and seedlings, depending on what season it is. And then take, for example, right in the spring, seedlings out into the garden. So when we transformed, this was originally just the back of the garage. That was a little scary when we first moved in, is now our beautiful potting room that we love working in. Almost every day we're out here. So we really wanted this to be a space where we could kind of do it all at once, which was great, and have it all at our fingertips. We'll go into the greenhouse first. It's very hot in here today. So we really wanted this space to feel, again, like another room. So it was an extension of the house, and not just for utility. Obviously, we do a lot of utility work in here with our plants, and, you know, obviously maintaining all of our different citrus. Usually all the citrus trees are in here over the winter. But I still wanted it to be beautiful in addition to functional. And here we've got some of our amazing plants that are in here right now. In the summer, we usually pull everything out of the greenhouse just because they get plenty of sun and heat outside, which is great. And then we can have all of our beautiful plants kind of on display outside. But my favorite plant that has been growing tremendously is actually right here. This bougainvillea. We bought this bougainvillea at a place called Logie's, which is a spectacular 100-year-old greenhouse. It's about an hour from here, so it's a drive, but it's worth it. Every time we go, they specialize in incredible different varieties of plants from all over the world, things you've never seen before. It's really spectacular. So this bougainvillea, we bought it, it was this big, it was a stick. And it has just exploded over the past couple of years and is really putting on quite a show today, which is always amazing. So one day the goal is to just keep keep maintaining and taking care of it so it gets bigger and bigger, and one day be able to train it kind of into the corner of the greenhouse like you kind of see in California where they're always cascading, or in Italy, or so that's the goal for this guy, but she's really a beauty. This plant that we love, again, also came from Logis. This is a kaffir lime. And the leaves are so beautiful and glossy, and they smell amazing. And it was in flower, and it's actually starting to produce little bitty baby kaffir limes. They're great, to zest. They're kind of a different lime flavor. It's kind of hard to explain, but this tree has struggled a little bit, and finally it looks amazing. So we're really happy that we were able to continually bring it back to life. It had some nasty bugs and scale and things that you don't want, but things that happen in greenhouses, especially with citrus fruit. But right now it's starting to really put on kaffir limes. So if you come back in a few months, we'll have limes for you. So over here, again, we kind of transformed this whole side of the garage to really be a true working space for us, for tools, and to really come out here and work at the table and pot things on. We love all these kind of just old work tables that have such a cool personality to them. But why I really brought you over here was our figs are really starting to bear fruit right now, which is fantastic. My husband has been obsessed with growing figs over the past 4 years, and we have literally taken, again, twigs. People have shipped him twigs from all over the world of fig cuttings, and he has been able to, propagate them into incredible fruit-bearing fig tree specimens. And every year these guys just get bigger and bigger and bigger. You can see just the growth that these are putting on already, and they just love sitting under the shade of this big sugar maple. And every year the figs get better and sweeter and bigger, and it's just so much fun to come out here in about, I'd say, September, late October, when they're really at their best. So we love watching the figs grow. And then we have different variety of citruses. We have 2 different kumquat trees. These fruit will turn bright orange. We love doing like kumquat jam with a cheese board, or just eating them plain is delicious too. Sometimes the skin is a little tough, so you do have to work through it a little bit, but they are absolutely delicious. So all of these kind of green, beautiful fruit will turn orange when they're ready. Which is quite beautiful. This plant right here that looks a little fabulously out of control is a kiwi plant. And we call it, again, this is from Logis, and it was named the Jenny, which is my nickname. So we call it Fuzzy Jenny. And this thing has died and come back to life, and died and come back to life, and is now thriving. We had some issues with the heat in our greenhouse over the winter, a couple winters ago. So we lost, unfortunately, a lot of plants, but this one just continues to live on. So we're really excited to kind of see, again, we want to train it to go up and kind of crawl, and it will probably bear fruit in the next 3-ish years. It hasn't put on any fruit yet, so come back in a few years and we'll check the kiwi. So again, kind of moving through these spaces, we really wanted this to be, room to room to room, potting room to greenhouse to garden to kitchen. So into the potting room. So this is our potting room, which originally was a big, empty, kind of very scary, I just called it the back of the garage room, that really was just animal overrun when we moved in, gross, storage, etc. And my husband and I, when we started envisioning, kind of the greenhouse and the garden and what this space would be, we knew we also wanted to build a potting room where we could really, obviously in the winter work, so we weren't outside, to work inside, to really make sure that we could, do seedlings and, get the garden going in January, February, which we were really excited to have a space that allowed us to continue gardening even if it was cold outside. So we put the plans together for this room and it came together really fast. Again, the contractor that we work with on all of our projects, he is amazing, and I'll walk you through. He made all of these workbenches. These were all custom made. He made them. He's an incredible mill worker. And he also did the concrete countertops. Again, we wanted something that was really beautiful looking, but also super durable. And it was a really fun day with 3 guys doing concrete countertops. And I have it on video. It was wild watching all of the guys try and flip the concrete out of the mold was a little wild, but it all came together and we really loved it with the wood and the stain and the countertops. And then my favorite piece that I found for the potting room is the big giant concrete trough sink, the double trough sink. I found this on Facebook Marketplace. It was free if I got it out of someone's basement. So of course, I was on a mission to have a sink like this in the potting room, not only because visually it's just so cool, it's a piece of history. This one specifically, the owner of the house said the house was from the 1930s. Again, this was in the basement. Nobody wanted it. He was going to break it into pieces to try and get it out of his basement. So I sent my guys to Rhode Island to go and pick it up at this person's house, and now it's here in our garage, which I love. And it's painted and dirty and it has a history, and I just love it. And it comes in handy when we've got, big pots and things that we need to put in here to wash. And I just love it. It was such a good find, and we plumbed it in, and that was that. And then the other piece that I loved about this room too is, the floors are original to the garage. There's a date on the floor somewhere. So someone carved that in, which is very cool. So I just love finding things like that. I mean, again, we didn't do anything to the floors in here. This was the original floor to the back of the garage. It has this, it must have been painted at one point because it's got this really cool blue kind of, deteriorated paint look, which is very cool, that we love. And then to kind of go with that blue look, we found this, again, kind of deteriorated, peeling blue paint workbench table, which we love working off of this table. And I'll show you guys, we've got some amazing alliums and different types of white flowers that I'm going to show you, and we're going to do a little arrangement, and I'll show you how I like to pot these up and put them on our table outside. So I'm really happy to have you guys here today in the potting room, because what we're going to put together are some really fun summer arrangements with some florals, some flowers, and some alliums that I really love, that are very expressive and whimsical. And these pots that we're going to pot up are going to go out on our table for tonight's dinner by the pizza oven. And we love using potted flowers because we like to reuse these in the garden. Anything that's a perennial, once it's out of a pot, and we've used it either for a dinner party or whether it's, on the table or decorative or what have you, we'll pop it in the ground. So nothing goes to waste. Obviously, unfortunately, the annuals don't make it through the winter, but something like this really beautiful summer beauty allium. This is so whimsical with all of these kind of curly Q little buds that are coming, and it's going to be really magnificent purple. It's really beautiful, kind of like these that are these that are also really purple. These are really beautiful alliums. And whenever you take these out of a pot, it just smells like beautiful fresh onion. It's really fantastic. So we reuse these all over, you know, all over the gardens, whether we put this back around the magnolia tree where all the other kind of purple alliums are, or we'll pop this into the patio garden kind of and interplant them. So we love to reuse things, which is very important to us, so all these plants don't go to waste. So we're gonna take these Summer Beauty alliums, and I kind of love this pot in front that I've already created with the alliums, and then also kind of this cascading underplanting of, I love this flower. It's called Diamond Frost. It couldn't be any better for me. I love, and it just keeps blooming and blooming and blooming, and I love how wispy and kind of lacy this flower is, and I love it mixed with how structured this allium is with all its leaves kind of shooting out from it, which is really beautiful. So like I said, these are gonna go out on the table for dinner. So I always love to start with, you know, when you're working on a pot like this, kind of what's in the center first, and then kind of what's trailing or cascading or kind of billowing out from there. So I'm gonna take this out of my pot, and I noticed the roots even smell like onions, which are just amazing. If you had smell-o-vision, this really has the most beautiful fragrance to it. This is really, really pot-bound, as you can tell. Once the roots really start doing this, you got to get it out of its pot. It needs to go into a bigger pot, so we're lucky today. Usually I'm a little bit more aggressive depending on how root-bound this is, but I go in and I really break all this up. This will help it just take root into this new pot better and get water and nutrients. So all this isn't all wrapped up. Sometimes we bring home things from like the nursery, and I mean, you could just like, you know, chop this even in half and it'll be fine. Just really loosen those up. So that's good. And then obviously the way, you know, potting should look good all the way around. You know, pots are 360 degrees, so whenever you're doing a tablescape, you should really be able to see, you know, all the way around the pot. So you want something that goes all the way around. But, you know, there is a direction on the table, so I do kind of like to check out, you know, what the best side of this plant might be. Maybe not that side, maybe it's this side. And then, you know, you position that to kind of directionally where you're looking. I'm actually going to set this kind of towards the back of the pot because I'm trying to achieve all of this kind of cascading forward, which is great. White shirt, potting room, not the best choice, but here we are. It's okay. So we have a few more of these Diamond Frost plants, which we love. And we go to all different nurseries around here. That's the one thing that's really phenomenal about this area. And also, you know, whether it's 20 minutes this way or that way, there are some phenomenal landscape stores and nurseries in this area. We go to Old Line Landscaping. We love them. They're just right up the road. We go to Ballick's Garden Center. I probably mentioned before, we go to Logie's. These are just a few of the places that we frequent quite often. And they're just wonderful people, and they have the most amazing plants that we love to get and bring home. So this I'm just breaking up because I'm trying to fit it into this pot. I probably should use a bigger pot, but we're putting this on the table, so I didn't want it to be too big. So I'm just taking this root ball here so I don't make a giant mess. I'm just taking this root ball here and just kind of breaking this up. Plant will be fine. We're just taking some of this excess dirt off of this. And then, again, I just kind of always look to see which direction I want something to go in. And then I just start to kind of pop all of these into place here. And we'll do it again with another one. I fit 3 into my last pot. I always squeeze and they come out. There's dirt all over me, but that's okay. Gardening in our finery. So again, just like loosening this up. I want to make it a little smaller, but still keep those roots. And then I'm going to go in here and again, check which direction I want this going in. I think it's okay. And then I just pop this in here. Once you have this kind of spread that you're looking for, I then go in with some more fresh potting mix. Break up this big clump that's in here. And I just go in and I fill in all these gaps to really make sure that this is potted properly. And then of course, once you're done, I'm not gonna fill this whole pot in right now, I will in a little. Once you're done, of course, we water. I love these canisters, aren't these darling? This is the company Hawes out of England. And they come in all shapes and sizes and colors, and they're just the most beautiful. So we just go in and water. Try not to water the flowers themselves. They don't love that. So I just try to water really low down below, and that's it. So now we're gonna bring these gorgeous pots out to our dining table out by the pizza oven, and we're gonna make some dinner and light the pizza oven. So now we're gonna walk over to the other side of the property where kind of our patios are, where we love to entertain. We have additional garden spaces over there as well. And one of our newest garden space, it's a new old garden space. It was originally, when we moved in, a garden of weeds, which we then turned into the original vegetable garden for the house. And then once we built the big vegetable garden, we were kind of left with, well, what do we do with that now? So I'll show you what we did with it. Hey, bud. This is Apollo. Hey, buddy. Apollo grew up here. When we first got him, it was COVID, and we moved into the house and we got Apollo, and this is his home. We spend a lot of time here, and we also live in Manhattan, and whenever we go to Manhattan, I know he gets really sad because this is his domain. He's so happy here. But we just walked around from the potting room and the greenhouse and the garden. Right now we're on the side of the patio garden, which I'll show you guys in a little bit, but we're actually gonna walk around to the brand new rose garden that we just planted. And that's the space where we transitioned the vegetable garden into the rose garden. So let's go that way. Come on, bud. Come on. Apollo, let's go. Come on. Let's go to the garden. So in here, I really love formal gardening. My husband likes a bit more organic, kind of native style plantings where it's kind of, and you'll see that in the patio garden, which is right next to the rose garden, where, you know, one space is very planted and organic and has a lot of different varieties, like a true kind of border going on. Whereas in here, I really love the formality. So that kind of juxtaposition we think works very well because we both kind of get what we love in a way. We drew out kind of the spaces and the different kind of areas and planting areas that we wanted to create in the garden. And really, you know, taking in mind, you know, that kind of really formal symmetry style that I love, that you really see in kind of classical French and English gardens. And we decided to completely rip out everything that was here, and we put in all of these box. Actually, Martha Stewart has an amazing boxwood resource where we sourced all of these little baby boxwoods, which one day will grow into a beautiful hedge. She is the boxwood queen, so anything she says about box goes. And this resource was phenomenal. So we were able to space out and plant all of these little baby boxes to really start to create that architecture in the garden. And this will take time to grow, but it is kind of fabulous to watch it as it gets bigger and bigger. And we'll be able to hedge that once it's a true hedge. And we decided to, in each of the space, have one variety of rose. So all of the roses in the garden are David Austin. They're all from England. We are setting timers and are first in line when their sale goes up online every season. And we had all of these shipped in bare root. So this is really their very, very first moment that they're growing. We planted these, I want to say probably in late April, early May, which was very exciting. So each bed is its own color story. So here we have some beautiful kind of sherbety orange, pink, and I also played with the color in here too. So once the roses really start blooming, when you come in, we have the very fragrant white roses in the front. So everything here is white, and then it transitions into gorgeous peachy yellows and oranges, and then goes around into pinks and gets really dramatic in the back in reds, beautiful, beautiful red roses. I love the big double flowering roses. So when you come back and everything's in bloom, all the big roses that are double flowering, it'll be really romantic and very dramatic. So if you come with me this way. So we wanted some other different types of plants and things in here as well. So in the inner kind of circle, we put this big giant wood obelisk that we love. We have 2 climbing roses on opposite sides of this obelisk. So as the roses gets bigger, we'll train them to kind of twist and go up the obelisk as they grow. And then we underplanted it with this spectacular lavender that, as you can see, just draws in all the bees and all the butterflies, and it's very active with the bees and the butterflies. They're happy today because it's sunny. And again, with the hedging, so once this grows in, this will look really magnificent once it's encased in that boxwood hedge with the roses that are really twisting up that center. A local, someone who lives locally about 20 minutes away made this for us. He's an amazing woodworker. So we also have some seating that we wanted in the garden. So again, little antique chairs and benches that we have in the garden. Over here again, we have, not in bloom yet, but in the back here, the vision was, this is a white clematis that has been here since we moved in, and it's not in bloom right now. This blooms very early in the spring, but this gorgeous kind of wall of white that it creates, we wanted to also bring in with the James Galloway. It's a climbing rose, again from David Austin, that's this gorgeous yellow. So to contrast that with the white and the yellow, and then the deep pinks and reds that we have over here will be really beautiful. This is a funny story. You're probably wondering what all this is. Because this was a vegetable garden, we sometimes get rogue vegetables that are still growing. We had some radicchio growing over here earlier in the season, and we have a ton of green and purple asparagus that we planted back here about 3 years ago. They take really 3 years to get going before you can start eating them. So this is all asparagus, and this too, that we will one day, kind of uproot all of this if we can. Not sure if we can, but we're gonna move the asparagus to the new garden. But it's kind of funny how no one ever really sees asparagus grow into a tree. So it's quite spectacular to watch that just kind of get unruly in this very controlled garden area, which is amazing. So we just came back in from outside, and now we're in our kitchen. Our kitchen is really the heart of our home. My husband and I both do a ton of cooking. We love to cook, we love to entertain. Actually, this past December, we had about a 50-person party in this space, and it was really fantastic to be able to really utilize all of the spaces within the kitchen for food and food service. We had, for this party in particular, we had the whole island covered in food, the side island covered in desserts. The bar, the table was full of, beautiful drinks and drinkware. And, we just love utilizing every square inch of this kitchen to host and entertain friends and family. So I want to walk you guys through. I'll walk you over to our stove kind of hearth area, which we love over here. This is our big 8-burner Wolf stove, which we love. I love cooking at this stove. It's really, you can get everything done. We've got kind of the grill here also. We love using Staub and copper pots. They really, are the best type of cookware. This copper pot and my copper champagne bucket that I have as well, that you'll see a little bit later, we brought back from Paris, and with many other pieces that you don't see at the moment. But I made my husband, we went to the most famous cookware shop in Paris. I'm sure many of you know what it is. And I just went a little crazy and decided we needed to bring all this copper cookware back in our suitcases, because we didn't ship it because we were going on to other places. So we schlepped probably 8 pieces of copper cookware across Europe that summer, and now it's here in our house. So we love this kitchen, and we love to maximize, again, every square inch of it for dinner parties and all sorts of really festive celebrations. And then, of course, everyday dinner, everyday breakfast, we just spend, you can always find me in here. We spend a lot of time in here. In our kitchen, at our kitchen table, we really love to host a little bit more casually here. We obviously use this space for, my husband and I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner here. But on occasion, we do host, especially over the winter when we can't utilize the outdoor patios, where we really love to entertain. We have more casual dinner parties in here. We'll do pizza parties, which you guys will see the pizza oven a little bit later. But we love to host friends and family in this kind of more relaxed, casual setting. So I just brought in, kind of all the veg that we got from the garden that's here. We love bringing all the vegetables in. One year we had so many tomatoes, the entire kitchen island was covered in tomatoes. It was unbelievable. So for our more casual tablescape, I really always kind of start with, I have all of these kind of earthenware, old antique oil pots laying around. They're very quintessentially, again, Connecticut, New England. You'll find them in every antique store, in every shop, everywhere. They're really amazing. These just big clay, beautiful pots that, people kept oil in or what have you. And they each have their own very unique shape and kind of neck and opening. They're all different, which is so beautiful. And they all really tell a story. I have some big ones, over here in the kitchen, the main area of the kitchen as well, but kind of that more casual feeling to kind of start setting the table with the runner and these kind of earthenware pots. I always love to start there because it really sets that tone to be a little bit more casual. And then these hydrangea flowers, they're dried, but these came from our hydrangea tree outside. When they were first blooming, the first kind of autumn fall that we were here, they started to turn these beautiful kind of orangey, pink, burnt kind of colors that looked so beautiful. So I was able to cut a bunch of them, and you'll see them all over the kitchen. And they just dried and turned into these little beautiful sculptures. And you can really, utilize these in a whole bunch of different ways. I move them around and put them in all sorts of different pots all the time. But most of the time they live in these clay pots, which I love. And they're just a great memory because every year I clip more and more when the limelight start to dry out, or the big, hydrangea tree ones, the blooms start to dry out. So I clip them all the time, which I love. So for this more kind of casual dining tablescape that we like to do in the kitchen. I love to utilize these kind of more handmade earthenware style dishes that are really beautiful. They even feel a little bit Japanese pottery, which I love. And then just a more casual napkin wrap. And these are some of my favorite cutlery, the wood handled Lejol cutlery. I love. They just feel really warm and they're tactile with the wood. They're not, kind of cold silverware. And I just love the tone that they bring to the table with the wood silverware and the baskets and the beautiful earthenware pots, and then just kind of, if we're having orange wine or rosé or, really crispy white, depending on what season it is. I love just these kind of more casual footed wine glasses and, kind of more really streamlined water cups to kind of complete this. I had these kind of crazy willow branches laying around too from December, which I love. I love to keep things, especially if they're dried, and reuse them and move things around the house and give things new life, and always re-envisioning spaces that I live with on a day-to-day basis, but kind of pluck things from here and there to make it look fresh and new every season. So. Okay, so we're back and we're on our back patio, which is where we do literally all of our entertaining. We love to be out on these patios. They're our absolute favorite spaces in the house. There are outdoor rooms, our outdoor dining rooms. And here I have a tablescape that I love to set this tablescape. There's a lot of really special pieces on this tablescape that I love to use. Of course, you guys see what we just potted up in the potting room, which is here. I love to bring these, kind of big, again, cascading, voluminous, these kind of ethereal looking alliums that we love, and I think that it really adds something when you mix it back to fine china that's very structured and can be seen as obviously very elegant and elevated. This adds a little touch of whimsy, which we love. So here on this table, this is a bit of a more, I guess you could say, formal, but still we're outside, so not super duper formal setting. I sourced these antique Janori plates, again, from my favorite place out here, Treasures. They actually got out of someone's home a place setting in this pattern, which is the Palermo Black pattern. Service for $70 in Palermo Black and service for, I think, another $70 in orange. So I'm very lucky that I now have service in this Janori pattern that I love. I didn't buy service for $70. I think I bought service for $20. And I also really love, to contrast the black and the gold, which is two pattern colors that I use very often, with these kind of really soft whites and greens and kind of this lilac-y blue. The other thing that I love are these napkins that I got from this company called Bespoke Letterpress. They're hand painted, gorgeous. You could use them as napkins, placemats, tea towels. They're hand painted and they just remind me so much of the garden. They're so beautiful. And so, you can just really elegantly fold them. And they're really soft. They're linen. So especially once they're washed, they're really soft. So that makes a gorgeous floral napkin to go with the floral scape. And then I love collecting cut glassware. Any type of antique cut glassware is my favorite thing. If I go into a vintage store, an antique store with glassware, we're in trouble because it's all coming home with me. And these are just some of my favorite, wine coupes and highballs. I like to mix and match also. I think having the different patterns with kind of a more modern wine glass looks great. And again, it's still elegant, but it's really approachable. And, we sit out here and we eat lots of pizza and things that come out of the pizza oven, and salmon and eggplant and all the vegetables from the garden. So we like to sit out here and really enjoy ourselves. Home is your safe space. It's where you get to create and express yourself and be who you are and curate all of the things that you love under one roof, and where you get to be your happiest, I guess.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.